What's the call in the world of municipal finance about what appears to be a much, much improved job market?
Well, the muni market kind of lags, the stock market certainly, but there's glimmerings out there. Things are picking up in the municipal market. You're seeing things come back to life, and that's what spurred all the big action in the stock market. That's actually what helps in the muni market. Yields there are amongst the lowest we've seen.
So let's talk a little bit about the why, which is partly the Federal Reserve. They've come out and opened up their direct lending facility to municipalities, even expanding it. How much is that supporting and promoting the backstop to municipal debt right now?
Well, the Fed helped out in the early days of March. When they said they were going to come in and start buying, and did. But the real thing that's keying this market right now is bonds that are maturing and bonds that are being called. I think we're seeing something like $50 billion or in the high 40s coming out of the market. So that's money that's seeking a new home. And this happens every, June and July. May, June, and July, you see these big call and redemption dates.
All right, Joe. So one of the issues that I'm sure is near and dear to the municipal investor's heart right now is fiscal stimulus. I think the latest round of fiscal stimulus that is in Congress being debated includes a pretty big slug for state and local municipalities. What's your call on kind of the likely impact of getting that legislation, or maybe now, maybe not getting it?
I think we're going to get something. I'm not going to get as much as we need or as much as we want. Again, the stock market is way out there, but right now you have state and municipalities, and what they're going to do next is and what they already have started doing, is cutting jobs and cutting budgets, cutting services. And that's really the last thing you want, in a recession, or it's something that would impede the recovery when you're laying off this vast number of people. And, the federal government, they could step in and apply a little money to the state and local sector and sort of assuage all those feelings, and that the market would be, wonderful. Well, market's feeling good right now.
I love it. Just throw in a little money and assuage all those feelings. That sort of, that's pretty much sums up markets right now. I will say, though, there is a question of what services some of these local municipalities are cutting. There's been a huge focus on cuts to police budgets, I know, around the country, and this has been part of the ongoing political discussion around the unrest and the protests. I'm wondering if that is sort of the dominant place of focus, or if there are other areas that are getting cut far worse.
When they go in, they say, okay, here we're going to cut the budget 10%, and when they bring in the chiefs and they say, what do you got? Here, prepare a budget for me with 10% out of it, and that's what they do. So they try to go across the board. So that's why you'll see health and hospital workers laid off and police workers laid off, and besides a lot of social services people. They try to make it as even as possible. We have a kind of a political feeling right now that, well, the police departments, besides needing reform, need to be restructured. So cut their budgets. So I don't know how wise that is right now, but again, if the federal government doesn't come in, well, that's also what they're going to get.
So, Joe, what are we seeing in terms of, we got a lot of redemptions coming up, a lot of bonds being called. What's the new issue market look like now in your world?
We have, it's over 150 billion, I think it is. And so volume is up over last year. I think it's up around 10% the last I checked. So the market is, first of all, the yields are extremely forgiving, unless you're Illinois, I guess. And so we're seeing issuers take advantage of that. And I suspect that we will see that calendar really fatten up in the next couple of weeks as issuers take advantage of the low rates which are caused by the calls and redemptions.
Joe Mysak, who covers all things munis for us, just real quick here. I think we're going to have to leave it there, and unfortunately, we don't have more time with you. Joe Mysak, who covers all things municipal debt for us here at Bloomberg News. Really interesting to see the reversal in fortunes, Paul, for this sector, given how much money was plowed into it last year, then withdrawn in mass earlier, and now coming back in.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary here. So the volatility of the markets is just amazing. The NASDAQ actually setting a new high here. The S&P and Dow retracing so much of that sell-off that we had back in March. Coming up in just moments, we have economic assistant to the president, Larry Kudlow, sitting down with Jonathan Farrow. We'll be going over those extraordinary jobs numbers, breaking them down. We'll get Larry Kudlow's take on that. Certainly, I'm sure going to be very happy with the numbers that they're seeing there in the White House. And it's just, you think about it, Lisa, looking for a 7.5 million job loss, came in with a 2.5 million job gain, a $10 million swing there. Yes, there are some caveats that we have to put in there, but again, just extraordinary nonetheless.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of questions around the classifications of different things, such as the PPP loans going to furloughed workers and those workers being counted as still employed or coming back on the payrolls. There is a question about how much is rehiring. Remember that these numbers only go through the middle of May. That said, even if you factor in some of those distortions, the numbers came in well better than expected. A big question now turns to the fiscal response. How much pressure is there on Washington, D.C. to go through with stimulus? President Trump doubling down today, saying he wants it. Let's take a listen to what Larry Kudlow, chief economic advisor to President Trump, has to say.
Joining us now is Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director. Larry, I understand we're tight for time. I understand it's very hot in Washington, D.C. as well, so I'll try and keep this one short for you. Thank you very much for your time. Quite clearly, a huge upside surprise for the jobs report in America. An administration looking to do more. Kevin Hassett, your friend and colleague, talked about getting everyone back into the labor force who lost their job. The president talked about more stimulus. Talk to me about time. How big and how quickly can we get the next package through, and through Congress fast?
Well, look, I didn't know about the get Congress fast part. We have taken some time off from legislation, even though we're talking to both parties. Kevin Hassett and I have done bipartisan conference calls, and there's always conversations among our leaders and their leaders. But we wanted to assess the economic story and see what the original $3 trillion package was going to do for the economy, and of course let the Federal Reserve develop and evolve its various lending facilities. So the point, Jonathan, is we will come back, I reckon, after July 4th, and we'll have a good discussion. We need policies that will help long-term economic growth. I think the rescue package was enormously helpful. I think the payroll protection program probably saved 50 million or more jobs, $510 billion. The story in today's numbers, as you've probably covered, is that temporary layoffs have gone back to work, roughly 3 million. And that is, I think, partly at least a direct function of the PPP program and, of course, the tax rebates and the unemployment help. So there you have it. I don't want to rush into anything. Neither does the president. Several times today he mentioned that we would have bipartisan talks. He's still sticking to the payroll tax holiday for the workforce, which I think is a terrific idea. And we're looking at a number of pro-growth options inside the administration right now.
Larry, let's talk about the enhanced unemployment benefits. They expire next month. There was some concern that maybe they would discourage people going back into the workforce. Quite clearly, if this labour market report today is any guide, that is not what's happening. What's the White House's position on extending those enhanced unemployment benefits?
We haven't made a final decision yet, so I can't get ahead of that curve. I will say there's a lot of momentum to reform the $600 plus up. There are probably better ways to do it to get around the disincentive problem. You're quite right. It didn't show up today, but it's early, and I'm concerned about that. And we may reward the workforce for going back to work. We're looking at a number of options on that score. Bear in mind, Jonathan, I don't think today's numbers was a one-time thing. I mean, the business openings by May 12th the survey week, was less than 50% small business. But the Chamber of Commerce down here is estimating now in early June, nearly 80% of small businesses have reopened. So that means more and more people who were furloughed or temporarily laid off will get back into the labor force in June and July and so forth. And as you know, there have been a lot of green shoots popping up, whether it's the Apple Mobility, the driving, the big surge in housing purchase applications, and other indicators. So I think the economy, the contraction probably troughed in mid-April. It was quick, it was hard, it was heartbreaking with hardship, but I think we're going to have a very sharp rebound, and you'll see it in the second half of the year, probably with about 20% economic growth.
Larry, I hope we see some serious growth. I don't want to get into the business of forecasts with you because, as we've seen this morning, this market, this jobs market, this economy can make people look pretty stupid pretty quickly. I do want to understand from you guideposts, how will you know that you've done enough on fiscal stimulus in the next month? What are you going to be looking for specifically to tell you whether you need to do more or whether you can pause?
Well, look, we're just going to look at the general trends. That's what we do. We try to track every number imaginable, particularly the so-called high-frequency leading indicators. I mean, for example, I'm not going to hang my hat on this, but I'm going to say one. The Apple Mobility Index is now widely used on Wall Street. That's an indicator of people getting out and traveling, right? They're looking for directions. Most of it's driving. So that's something we might not have thought about before this pandemic problem, but now we're looking at it. I'm still looking at traditional indicators like, mortgage applications or new business startups, both of which are rising sharply. And then the traditional indicators, of course, on jobs, income, sales, and so forth. So we're going to try to look at the whole panoply of numbers to get a feel, for what's working and maybe where the trouble spots are.
Larry, of course, when you and I talk, we talk about the aggregate numbers, and I think we have to spend a little bit more time talking about the disparity. The president called this a really big jobs report. Of course, it is. He said this is better than a V. This is a rocket ship. He also said this is a tribute to equality on a day when black unemployment actually climbed, on a week where there's been some real social unrest. And I just wonder, Larry, whether that speaks to the tone deafness that some people are complaining about at the moment. Don't we have to appreciate the disparity behind the headline numbers just a little bit more, Larry?
Well, look, the president, I was there. The president didn't denigrate that thought. His answer to that question, which I think was a cheeky question, frankly, was growth and opportunity. And look, you go back to January and February of this year. It seems like decades ago, but it was only a few months. National unemployment around 3.5%, and every single minority unemployment indicator, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, the whole panoply, they were rock bottom, record lows. That's what growth and that's what opportunity does. That's what incentives do. And we've added to that substantially with direct aid into neighborhoods and the opportunity zones packages. And look, I think you can look forward to more tax cuts, more deregulation, and more trade deals that are reciprocal and fair that will spark an export boom. So I'm not one that's going to target individual groups. I think if the overall economy grows, a rising tide will lift all boats, and I think that was proven by Trump policies in recent years and even recent months before the pandemic. Go back and look, run your fingernail down those unemployment rates. You'll see record lows across the board. So that's the goal. The goal is to help everybody. Help everybody.
Larry, we've talked about those numbers in the past. I've allowed you to highlight them many times. You've had great success in those particular areas. I am concerned, though, we're not going to help particular groups. Why wouldn't we, if they've been disproportionately hit by what we've seen play out over the last several months?
Well, let's, I tell you what, the bottom of this contraction was, I think, mid-April. Most economists are coming around to that view. So these job numbers came a few weeks later. So I think, Jonathan, you've got to calculate and examine and assess the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. and then we'll take a look at the story. These things cannot be done overnight. There's no question that the lower wages, the lower income folks were the first to lose their job. I absolutely grant that. That is true. It's also the case, however, if you go back a few months when the economy was booming, that it was precisely the lower wage groups that had the highest, fastest growth in wages and income. So that's an example of how a growing economy and growing opportunities will help everybody. So I'm just saying on these points, let's not rush to judgment. This is the first genuine major piece of good news. There's a lot more coming, and we will examine everything. Look, I spent my life as a civil rights Republican, Jonathan, and an equal opportunity Republican.
I understand.
I was a protege of Ronald Reagan and Jack Kemp many years ago, so I understand the issue. I'm just saying that a rising tide will lift all boats, and meanwhile, we will provide extra help where it is needed. I mean, have a look at the program for opportunity zones. It's a widespread investment program with tax incentives, with education incentives, with health care incentives. That's something that Secretary Ben Carson and Senator Tim Scott helped design with the president. That's a program that should get more attention and visibility.
Larry, I would never question your compassion. You know that. You've always displayed great compassion on this program, on this network, and I'll continue to give the opportunity to talk about these subjects. They're trying to pull you away. And as always, you and I could talk together forever. So let's just get one final question in on trade. The president said at the end of April that he could do a lot when it came to responding to China and give them the consequences that he thinks they deserve. Have we seen the fullness of America's response in the last couple of weeks, or is there more still to come?
My suspicion is more is still to come. China will be held accountable. We don't have enough time to go through the litany, but with respect to the pandemic, with respect to what they're doing in Hong Kong and other problems, they completely lack transparency, including investor transparency. So I don't know. We may see more actions there. I will say this, though. We are engaging with them on the Phase 1 trade deal. We are. So we'll leave it at that.
Larry, we'll leave it there. I know it's boiling hot for you. Go and get a cold drink. Thank you very much. We hope these numbers continue, Larry, and we look forward to catching up again soon. Larry Kudlow there, the National Economic Council Director, joining us from Washington, D.C. Guys, back to you.
That's Jonathan Farrow of Bloomberg Television, talking with Larry Kudlow, the economic assistant to President Trump, talking about those really extraordinary job numbers we saw this morning. Lisa and Mr. Kudlow suggesting that he expects more good news to come as the economy continues to gradually recover.
Yeah, and we all hope that there'll be continued good news. We all want the economy to recover as quickly as possible. Just a quick data check here. You got the NASDAQ up 2.2%, the S&P up nearly 3%, the Dow up nearly 4%, the NASDAQ reaching a new all-time high, Paul.
Yeah, Lisa, it's not just stocks. Look at oil right here. WTI crude up 4.7%. That's $1.77 a barrel, $39 a barrel for WTI crude, a big move. We're fortunate right now, as we talk about oil, to welcome Ellen Wald. She's the president of Transversal Consulting. She's also a Bloomberg Opinion contributor. So, Ellen, we've had some extraordinary economic data today. We've had a really, really strong turnaround in oil prices over the last several weeks. Let's take a 30,000-foot view, if you will, of oil. Where do you think oil should be trading here? Is this $39 level a reasonable level for you?
I think it's an optimistic number, but it's not unreasonable given all of the good news that we've been seeing. I mean, the job numbers are positive, but so is OPEC. And President Trump mentioned this in his speech. He essentially thanked Russia and Saudi Arabia for cutting oil production and saving the U.S. oil industry. And there is some truth to that statement because this comes just as OPEC is getting ready to agree to extend its oil cuts by another month. And if they extend those cuts to the end of July, they really could be setting up the U.S. oil industry for a comeback of sorts, because some of the big producers in the shale region are looking at the price of WTI and saying, hey, it makes sense to start to open up some of those shut down wells.
So, Ellen, I'd love to get a sense. I mean, that's from the supply side. A lot of people were saying this was largely a demand-driven story with people not driving or flying in airplanes. Can you pair the idea of demand with the jobs report that we just got, the idea people are going back to work, people are getting on airplanes, people are driving around, is that confirmed in the drawdowns that you're seeing in oil inventories?
Yeah, and that's a big question, and that's really, I think, where we need to focus our attention, because we are seeing big gains in oil, gasoline, diesel consumption, but that's because we're comparing it to incredible lows from April. And if you actually look at the amount of gasoline and oil products that are being consumed compared to where they are last year, they're very, very low. I mean, we're not even higher than we are. I think we're lower right now than we would be in the winter, and summer is a time of a very high consumption. So the demand numbers are definitely growing, but they're much lower where they need to be. And that's also, I think that there are some forecasts for demand that are very, very optimistic, and a lot of that does depend not just on opening up, but on how people respond. Are people actually going to travel this summer? Are they going to be able to travel? Are they going to feel comfortable traveling? And some of that depends on what the recession looks like, if people are going to cut back on travel because of that, or if people are going to actually use their cars more as they shun public transportation. And that's a question that we really don't have a good answer to yet.
Right. Ellen Wall, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate you coming on, sharing your insights on energy. Ellen Wall, president of Transversal Consulting and a Bloomberg Opinion contributor. Well, Lisa, this has been kind of an exceptional day here. Incredible jobs data, incredible move in the markets. But for me, the biggest thing is this is your last day working with me on Bloomberg Markets. Starting Monday, you're going to Bloomberg Surveillance full time, aren't you?
I am, and you've got a new partner in crime who will be fantastic with you. You're going to be a great team. I'm going to miss working with you so much. Vonnie Quinn will join you for the Bloomberg Markets show starting on Monday. I'm kind of sad, I've got to be honest, because I love working with you, Paul, so much. But we will be moving forward, and I'm sure we'll be collaborating going forth in many ways.
Absolutely. It's been, just think about the, year and a half that you and I have been together. It's kind of the moves we've seen, the stories we've seen in the markets, the moves we've seen in the markets have just been extraordinary in any time frame, but in that short time frame, it's just been extraordinary. And today is just another day. It seems like another Friday, but if we get this jobs number, then this big move in the market. Yeah. So it's been amazing.
I'll leave you with this, and this comes from our friend Coley, who's a listener. Why can't a nose be 12 inches long?
Why can't it?
Because then it would be a foot.
All right, we will go with that. I like that. That's a good way to end a Lisa Abramowitz, career on Bloomberg Markets as she goes to bigger and better things over at Bloomberg Surveillance. Joining Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrows starting Monday. Tune in for that. We expect that will be fantastic. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. At the start of every...
TfL has a plan to help London reopen. You can do your bit by working from home if you can. Avoid public transport and walk or cycle to work or school wherever possible. We're increasing the number of buses, trains and tubes we run, but they may still be busy during peak hours. If you must use public transport, avoid early mornings between 5:45 and 8:15 and evenings between 4 and 5:30. This will help those who must travel at this time to do so safely. Search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcox, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, this is Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. And we're going to start with the markets today because, not big surprise, given those stunning jobs numbers, they are up rather unambiguously. And to bring it all to us, we welcome now Abigail Doolittle. Abigail?
Really looking at a best case scenario here, not just for that payrolls report with 2.5 million Americans back to work, which is great in new jobs, really fortunate and good news for this country. But that's also good news for the stock market, which might not have been the case because in some ways with the S&P 500 up 40% before today from the March lows, you could have made the case this is what markets were hoping for. So it's not a sell the news event, it's a buy the news event. So investors, the S&P 500 and stocks, a forecasting tool in the future, telling you that perhaps we're going to continue to see strong economic data. And you can see a rally right across the board. The Dow is up even more than the S&P 500. That has to do with the strong cyclical tilt to this rally, David, with the energy, industrials, financials really leading the way. And there's that energy index there, up 8%. If you can believe it, David, energy, and I guess you could in a way since oil's been all over the map, but now truly in recovery mode. The energy index nearly up 100% since its March low. So investors all in on the day, David, on risk assets.
Yeah, well, Abigail, they may be buying the news because they didn't have a rumor, because nobody thought it was going to come out this way, right? They couldn't buy in advance. At the same time, we've been talking about possible rotation out of bonds. Are people leaving bonds because they like equity so much?
They certainly are, to such a degree that right now the 10-year yield is backing up the most ever. It's up about 28 basis points on this week, David. Today alone, I think about 9 or 10 basis points. Yield trades inverse to price. So that, of course, tells you investors going out of bonds. And that money today does certainly seem to be going into stocks. Whether or not that dynamic will continue, money out of bonds and into stocks is to be seen. But if it does happen, and today it appears to be happening, it could suggest that there may just be another leg to this most hated rally ever. But again, the S&P 500 up 40% into today, a forecasting tool on what proved to be, a very promising jobs report, especially against the backdrop for such negativity. It's great that it came out the way that it did, David.
Yeah, no question about that. Thank you so much to Abigail Doolittle. Well, as Abigail Doolittle said, we had an estimate of losing 7.5 million jobs last month, and it turns out we gained 2.5, a 10 million job swing. So not surprisingly, President of the United States, Donald Trump, decided to take a victory lap in a news conference just a short time ago, and where he said that we had outstanding numbers, but it's just the beginning because he thinks there's long-term growth coming. This is part of what he said.
The numbers are great, and this leads us on to a long period of growth. We'll go back to having the greatest economy anywhere in the world, nothing close. And I think we're going to have a very good upcoming few months.
And now we're joined by the person we always talk to on subjects like this. He is Michael McKee. He is our Chief Economic and Policy Correspondent. Mike, great to have you. I was watching you as these jobs numbers came out. I've never seen you so nonplussed on the air as you had every right to be. You were stunned with the rest of us.
we all went into this trying to guesstimate how bad the number would be, David. So when it came out and said 2.5 million jobs, I thought, oh, well, that's like ADP. We lost 2.5 million. And then I read we gained, and it was quite a surprise. We also saw the unemployment rate fall to 13.3%. Another big surprise, was supposed to go up to 19%. Now, the BLS had its usual caution. They've had real trouble accounting for unemployment during the COVID crisis. And they say if everybody had been properly classified, unemployment would have been 16.3%. But if everybody had been properly classified last month, it would have been 19.5%. So either way you look at it, a significant improvement in the numbers. And pretty much all of the underlying numbers were improvements as well, with one exception of unemployment for blacks, which rose during the month of May. And that becomes somewhat important given the context of what we've been going through over the last 10 days or so. But everything else, pretty good. It's hard to see where you would find a fault with this report. The question is, does it last? And that's going to be the real question for people up on Capitol Hill as they decide whether they want to do a fourth stimulus or not.
Exactly. Let me pick up on that, though. Do we have any ability to look ahead and decide whether these really good jobs numbers, which we all value, are a timing issue? That is to say, are we borrowing from future months, or is this really an overall growth in the jobs situation?
Well, we don't really know, and that's going to kind of be the problem. The idea of waiting to July to talk about a stimulus package may have some merit in that we want to see if there was a real PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, impact in the numbers. Did people bring workers back onto payrolls and still be paying them with government money, but not as an unemployment insurance because they weren't doing any work? As the country opens up over the next month, we'll get a much better read on that, how much demand there is, how many people come back because their companies need them rather than because the government was paying them to keep them on the payrolls. That's going to be the real question in deciding what we need. Also, you saw the number, the average hourly earnings drop significantly. That's because the people who came back onto payrolls were among the lowest paid. What happens with that $600 a week bonus for unemployment? Do they extend that? Do they drop that off? And how does that affect incentives to work and hire? A lot of questions that we don't have answers to at this point that would go into deciding what you want to do and how much more you might want to spend.
One final one. You mentioned the differentiation between blacks and Hispanics and whites on the other hand. There was also differentiation among sectors where it looked like construction, manufacturing, retail, healthcare did really well. Other places didn't do well at all, like hotels.
Yeah, it really kind of lines up with what you were able to do. Construction workers could come back because of some openings in various states, and the weather is starting to get good, so you would expect that. The restaurant workers, 1.3 million come back to work. That was a surprise. It may have had to do with more with PPP than the people actually going to restaurants, because we know even in states that were open, restaurant capacity is lower. But we know people weren't traveling. So as you say, the hotel industry not doing as well, airline industry not doing as well. We'll see what happens as we go into the next month, as we go into the numbers for June and see whether they improve. One area we do want to mention that will impact the decision on whether to add stimulus is we still lost over 500,000 government jobs. And that could get a lot worse if there isn't money put into another stimulus program for states and cities. So we have to keep an eye on that.
So true. Thank you so much to Michael McKee for that report. Coming up, we're going to talk with Austin Goolsbee of the Chicago Booth School of Business about the state of the economy and the need for that stimulus bill that Mike was just talking about. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Working from home.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back.
£30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed. Retrieve data fast. Scalability. Grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity. Easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
At Asda, we're helping you shop safely by keeping our stores clean and limiting customer numbers so you can keep 2 meters apart. With our Scan and Go mobile app, you can reduce contact at the till too. Asda, we're all in this together. Subject to availability. Mobile data charges may apply.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Hey, y'all, we're taking the Marty Party to a whole new level with the Marty Smith's America podcast with Gerald McCoy.
I truly believe that Carolina made a mistake letting Cam go. This is not a personal shot at Teddy Bridgewater. This could have been Andy Dalton. This could have been whoever they brought in. Cam has so much left. Somebody's really getting a great one, man. And I don't think people really understand what they're getting.
Search Marty Smith America to listen.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Shaquille O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Pulls over a man into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown!
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
No,
economic advisor, and he is now professor of economics at the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago. We welcome him now back to Bloomberg. So welcome, Austin. It's great to have you. We have to start with those jobs numbers. We want to know about the economy overall, but those jobs numbers were knockout. What happened?
Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise for sure that we started adding jobs sooner than we thought we were going to. I think it's important to remember the context that we had a giant drop in jobs. This refills maybe 10% of the hole from the previous month, and mostly it's concentrated in the leisure and hospitality sector. Of the 14 big sectors that the Bureau of Labor Statistics keep track of, 5 of them employment fell. In 9 of them it went up, but in only 1, leisure and hospitality, did the majority of the job creation come from. So overall, it's a pleasant surprise to get a number that doesn't seem to match with some of the negative numbers coming out of UI, and we're going to just have to see how this goes.
Well, and that's the question. We don't know yet, but do we have any indication yet whether these really strong numbers, and surprisingly strong numbers, indicate that the jobs recovery will come sooner, or are we really borrowing against future months?
I think we're keeping our fingers crossed that this is going to keep going. I think the upside is that it was a nice, strong number. The downside is, unlike the job declines last month, this one is focused really in just the one sector, leisure and hospitality. You saw massive job losses across the board in every industry. This might be more of the short-term rebound effect because it's concentrated in what was one of the hardest hit of all the industries. But hopefully not. Hopefully this is the mark of something that's going to begin to be more broad-based.
So Congress, with the president, have injected trillions of dollars now into the economy. There's talk about more to come, including things like the payroll protection plan. Do we have any way of knowing the extent to which that's helping generate these favorable numbers?
Yes, that's super important, but we don't really have a way to know that because the Small Business Administration and the White House have not been tremendously forthcoming with information about who's getting the money. If we knew that, if we had more oversight in that way, we could track, in a sense, what's happening to the employment of people who got it versus people who didn't and stuff like that. I think we will get over time a better read on the size of firms. And if you saw this rebound concentrated among the types of firms that would be eligible for the payroll protection, then that would at least be pointing you in that direction. But I think right now we really don't know how much of this was policy and how much was just rebound because economic activities come back a little bit.
Does that uncertainty and the need to wait to find out indicate anything about timing of further stimulus? Because Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has been saying we've got to go right now. She's got a very big, over $3 trillion package to go, including state and local support, other support for individuals. The White House and the Republicans are saying, well, we can wait a little longer, although the White House seems to say we need some money for the states. The president mentioned again this morning also maybe some money for infrastructure. Is it possible that this indicates, these numbers would indicate it's okay to wait until July?
I don't know. I'm nervous about that, but I do think the spirit of your question is 100% accurate, that this took a little bit of the wind out of the sails of saying it's really quite imperative that we get in. The unemployment rate is astoundingly high, remains even after this month the highest in almost a century. You saw the White House and the White House's allies say, oh, well, this is a sign that we don't need to extend some of these rescue programs. And so that probably means it's going to end up like everything else in a big partisan food fight, and it probably adds some uncertainty and delay to what that relief might be.
Austin, these dramatic numbers come at the end of a week that has been racked with demonstrations, even riots across the country, as people demonstrated against that tragic killing of George Floyd up in Minneapolis. I do have to note that in these numbers, maybe one downside is it looks like the black unemployment rate did not go down at all, even as white and Hispanic unemployment did go down. What does that indicate? Why is that true? Especially because, if I remember correctly, on the downside, blacks were disproportionately hit by losing jobs.
Yeah, it's true. The unemployment rate for African Americans rose this month, even as the overall employment picture was improving. I think that much of that is probably about what sectors different groups work in. So the positive contribution on jobs, as I say, the majority of the jobs were in the one sector of leisure and hospitality. That's not an abnormally disproportionate African American employment sector. If you look at Hispanics, that does tend to be more disproportionately in leisure and hospitality, and the Hispanic unemployment rate fell quite a bit this month. I think that issue of disparities across racial groups, across education groups, across geographies, that was with us before this COVID crisis ever began, and the COVID crisis has made that worse. And nothing changed this month really in that diagnosis. The overall thing is we just had the worst job hit in the history of the United States, and what happened this month only filled that hole about 10%. We're still have an unemployment rate that is unbelievably high, and we've got to get that unemployment rate down.
Yeah, also, it's so important what you said, that we had the bad and growing inequality problem before COVID hit. COVID made it worse because, very sadly, blacks and Hispanics were disproportionately hit by that. But are we also making it worse by what we're doing to save the economy? And that is both in the monetary and the fiscal side. As we inject money into the system, there's a piece actually on the Bloomberg today about how companies now can borrow a lot more money and are borrowing a lot more money even as they're laying people off. Are we helping the people who have and not helping the people who have not?
I hope not. I don't think so. I think mostly our policy response has been about trying to prevent this temporary, hopefully temporary hit from morphing into a Great Depression. And if we have a Great Depression style recession, that's going to be bad for everybody. So I do think intentionally we've been trying to move quickly to prevent further damage. But because we're moving quickly, I do think we are going to find numerous hiccups like what we saw with PPP, where people look and say, wait a minute, there are a bunch of small businesses who couldn't qualify, and there are a bunch of big businesses that said they were small and they got money, and the Los Angeles Lakers got money. So I think we are due for a bunch more things like that, where companies take money from the Fed or the federal government and they still lay off the workers. But I don't think so far the policy, I think you'd have to describe the policy as helping, not hurting.
Okay, Austin, thank you so much. It's always a treat to have you on. That's Austin Goolsbee. He is professor of economics at the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago. And a programming note now, Wall Street Week will premiere tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and then run through the weekend. And we'll be joined by Larry Summers, former Secretary of the Treasury, and Mona Mahajan. She is an investment strategist with Allianz. That's coming up tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Market upheavals.
The narrative is driven by uncertainty about the virus.
Political reversals.
It's not clear that some of the Republicans up on the Hill are agreed with the Republican White House.
Economic shifts.
The macro clearly being driven by the coronavirus outbreak.
Everything seems to be in motion.
Will it also mean a global recession in your view now?
But here, you're on solid ground.
Looking forward to guiding you through all of this.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's time now for Stock of the Hour, and it is Boeing. It appears that airlines are on their way back, with the TSA saying we have a lot more people using airlines than we thought, and Boeing really is driving the Dow. To explain it all to us, we're welcome now Abigail Doolittle.
Well, David, we really do have the shares of Boeing absolutely soaring there, no pun intended, up about 15%, the best day in almost 2 months. But it's part of a broader rally. In fact, right now, Boeing on pace for its best week since the end of March within a 3-week rally. And behind this, you really have two components. First of all, we do seem to have a return to the sky by Americans and American Airlines yesterday, as you know, talking about the fact that they are boosting their flight capacity for the month of July by 74%. Now, that's down on a year-over-year basis, but it does provide some optimism around this beaten-down sector on the pandemic. You know, air flying basically all but halted. Second, we do have that positive jobs report. As you know, more than 7 million Americans were expected to lose jobs. Instead, 2.5 million have gained jobs. That could create a sense of optimism that will help any pent-up demand for travel that Americans can let go of those discretionary dollars. And relative to the export numbers, David, this is important because if you can believe it was a little bit surprising to me to learn about this, but export from a standpoint, Boeing has actually been the #1 exporter. So if Boeing gets back in business in terms of building planes and parts, it could really boost that trade balance as well, David.
Well, address that point as well, Abigail, if you would. It's not just Boeing. It's all the people who supply parts to Boeing, all the people that work in all those places. Is there any indication that they're also coming up with things like Boeing as we anticipate more air traffic around the country?
Well, we do certainly have a rally for some of those air part suppliers right across the board. So every company really related to air travel, whether it's the planes themselves, the airlines, or the aircraft suppliers, big rallies. Investors want in on this beaten down sector because, again, it was hit the worst coming out of the pandemic. So there's the sense that if we really do start to see Americans take to the skies, millennials apparently a little bit more welcoming to this idea of wanting to get back in the air. But if we see people get into the air more quickly than expected, and not just for leisure, but also if there's more business travel than expected at some point later this year, we don't know if that's the case, but there's some sense of optimism that could happen, that we could see some more travel happening. And speaking of travel, David, very interesting. President Trump during his press conference did mention the idea that he is buying an RV, and on that we saw Winnebago, those shares, reverse a loss and spike higher. So it seems many people right across the board want in on this potential return to travel.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because as I listened to that, I thought, what's going to happen to Winnebago, as he turned to Mike Pence and said we have to go to Indiana. Thank you so much to Abigail Doolittle for that report on Stock of the Hour. Coming up, we're going to talk with Adrian Perkins. He's the mayor of Shreveport, Louisiana, one of the cities that has experienced demonstrations. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are climbing after a positive jobs report boosted optimism in the economy. The Dow was up 954 points to 27,236. NASDAQ climbing 2%. S&P up 2.8%. The government reports 2.5 million jobs were created in May, suggesting a quick rebound from the pandemic lockdowns. The national jobless rate fell to 13.3%, but unemployment isn't down for all. The jobless rate for African Americans rose to 16.8%, while the rate for whites fell to 12.4%. Latinos came in at 17.6%, the highest in the nation. JCPenney has won court approval for its $900 million bankruptcy financing package. It gives the retailer fresh cash to help cover its costs while it's in Chapter 11. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Reopenings. Is there a likelihood that we have a sustained recovery?
Requirements.
Lawmakers have passed sweeping legislation.
Returns.
The president signed an executive order.
Bloomberg Daybreak with Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
We continue our Bloomberg Radio team coverage.
Everything you need now.
Let's head to Washington now.
Bloomberg Daybreak. Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's time now for Bloomberg First Word News. And for that, we go to Mark Crumpton.
David, thank you. The Trump administration is imposing new limits on Chinese airlines. The United States said today that China had violated airlines' rights by limiting flights and would only allow 2 flights a week in total from Chinese airlines to enter the country. On Thursday, China said it would limit U.S. airlines to 1 flight per week each. Iran continued its elevated rate of nuclear fuel production last quarter, even as the coronavirus pandemic forced it to shut down much of the economy. The country's store of low-enriched uranium increased by more than 50% over the past 3 months. That's according to an International Atomic Energy Agency report seen by Bloomberg. It's enough of the heavy metal to create 2 bombs if Iran chose to enrich the material to weapons grade. The European Union is planning to extend a ban on most travel to the bloc until at least July 1st. The EU has said member nations should first remove internal border controls triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. The curb on non-essential travel was first put in place in March and has been extended twice. Brazil has now passed Italy to have the 3rd highest death toll from the coronavirus. The country reported more than 1,400 deaths over the past 24 hours. In all, more than 34,000 Brazilians have died from the disease. Brazil accounts for about 40% of the world's daily virus deaths. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thank you so much, Mark. Well, cities across the country are bracing for a second weekend of likely protests. This in the wake of the tragic killing of George Floyd up in Minneapolis. Well, Shreveport, Louisiana has its fair share of protests, but they've been peaceful thus far. We welcome now the mayor of Shreveport. He is Mr. Adrian Perkins. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for joining us. Really appreciate it. What has been the key thus far to your success in having lawful protests that are peaceful?
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me on. And the key to our success is simply making sure that we allow our citizens to have their voice. I'm a military veteran. I fought for the Constitution, and we're letting the protesters know, hey, you have a right to assemble, and we're going to protect you and keep you safe. So we're very supportive of the movement, and our ears and hearts are open to their concerns.
Do you expect protests through the weekend, sir?
We do. There was an announcement at the first protest that they would protest for 45 days. And we've already gotten some people that have applied for applications. So, yeah, there'll be multiple protests throughout the weekend.
So, Mr. Mayor, you say you were a veteran. You sell yourself just a little bit short. You attended West Point. You were president of your class, first African-American, as I understand it, president of a class at West Point. And then you went on to be a captain, an artillery captain. How did you react to the back and forth between the President of the United States on one hand and the former Defense Secretary, Jim Mattis, and the former Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, about whether federal troops should be used to keep the peace?
Yeah, honestly, when I was in uniform, I was extremely, bipartisan, apolitical, and I would never get caught up in anything like this. So I completely understand the retired flag officer's position on that. The military is to make sure that we, primarily fight our enemies that are foreign, and only in the biggest emergencies do we fight, domestic type of, or be involved with domestic type of instances. And, this doesn't rise to that. These are people exercising their constitutional rights. State governors and even local mayors are handling the situation on the ground accordingly.
Mayor Perkins, we've gotten some dramatic numbers on job creation last month. As a nation overall, give us a sense of the situation in Shreveport. What's the state of your economy? What's the state of employment and unemployment there?
Yeah, so the state of our economy, we aren't doing well, just like cities across the country. We're struggling to balance our budget in the face of unprecedented shortfalls due to COVID-19. Shreveport is already resource constrained. I came into office about 18 months ago and inherited a $1.2 million deficit. Now we're able to tighten our purse strings and turn that deficit into $4 million. But COVID is definitely going to wipe that away. Our initial projections, we thought that we'd have about a $25 million shortfall. So that's the things that we're fighting right now. We're focusing on balancing the budget right now, but we've avoided layoffs, and that's what we were really, really focused on.
You're down there not too far from the oil patch. Are you being affected by what's going on with the oil markets, particularly in the shale industry? I think you have a fair amount of drilling activity, don't you?
Yeah, we do. And that's affecting our economy as a whole. A lot of our clearly managerial positions and a lot of our citizens work in the oil field. We have Bentler Steel here. They've announced that 3/4 of their workforce will be cut down, at least temporarily, and they'll make the final call next January to see how the market rebounds. We also have a massive gaming industry here, and we've had a casino announce a permanent closure. So yeah, we're getting hit in multiple ways.
We'll talk about that casino because I know you have had a fair amount of gambling, legal gambling down there. How's the situation with COVID-19 in Shreveport, and to what extent is that really inhibiting businesses such as a casino?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you know, but our governor announced that we'll be going into phase 2. So businesses that were open in phase 1 will be able to expand to 50% capacity. Our casinos are opening back up, but we're continuing to monitor the situation. All data indicates that local economies in warm weather states like Louisiana are recovering faster, and that warm weather invites people to get out and be more active, shop. And in phase 2, we're also encouraging our people to shop local so that we can keep dollars here. But what we don't want is for, as people go back into casinos and other businesses that are opening, is for the spread of the virus to tick back up. And fortunately, we are not seeing that. We didn't see that in phase 1.
Well, that's great, and we hope that that continues. President Trump himself, though, who really favors opening up as fast as possible, today said we have to be prepared for some flare-ups here and there. Do you have what you need in terms of testing, in terms of contact tracing? Do you have an infrastructure that can handle it if you do have some instances flare back up?
Yeah, I will say this. Shreveport was actually the most tested city and parish in the state of Louisiana when Louisiana was the most tested early on in this pandemic. But I will say mid and smaller cities often aren't equipped with the type of medical and public health infrastructure that Shreveport has. So although we have what we need, a lot of other like cities don't have what they need. And I will say personally, I have to protect lives before I protect livelihoods. We can't have an economy without the people. So again, we are watching the data. And again, if there are flare-ups, we're doing everything we can to prevent flare-ups. But if there are flare-ups, I will be the first person to make sure that we, put precautions in place to protect our citizens.
So finally, Mayor Perkins, give us your sense of the larger picture across the United States, because we're all so mindful of what's going on right now, what we're watching, some of which is because of police brutality, which is unjustified and needs to be addressed, some of which is because of underlying inequalities, economic and otherwise, in our economy. As a leading official, what would you prescribe for the country? What would you like to see done that might address the underlying causes of some of the anger?
Yeah, well, I will say, just describing the big picture, we've jumped from crisis to crisis to crisis. People are tired. People are exhausted. We went from the COVID-19 pandemic to an economic crisis, and now we're in the middle of addressing racism in a very serious way. Leadership is more important than ever. Leaders at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level need to listen right now and need to be humble. The people are screaming out for help. A lot of things that have fueled the economic crisis and the protest is the inequalities in our society. We are been knocked down. We're in a bit of a rubble state right now, and we need to build ourselves up more equitably. And the only way we do that is by listening to the people that gives us the authority in the first place. So leadership is extremely critical. If we keep our hearts and our minds open, I think we'll get through this and we can be a stronger country.
Thank you so much, Mayor Perkins. That's Mayor Adrian Perkins of Shreveport, Louisiana. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Richard Trumpka. He is the president of the AFL-CIO about the remarkable events of this week. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Gathering world-renowned...
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events. He does! Fabry wins it! To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
Hey, y'all, we're taking the Marty Party to a whole new level with the Marty Smith's America podcast with Gerald McCoy.
I truly believe that Carolina made a mistake letting Cam go. This is not a personal shot at Teddy Bridgewater. This could have been Andy Dalton. This could have been whoever they brought in. Cam has so much left. Somebody's really getting a great one, man. And I don't think people really understand what they're getting.
Search Marty Smith America to listen. Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
Plays to the 5! Touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 2005, Spaniard Rafael Nadal beats Mariano Purata of Argentina to claim his first French Open title.
In the backhand. It's away, and Nadal is the champion. An incredible young talent.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
There are officers of every color, every background, and every stripe in America in those unions. And the vast majority are good people committed to protecting and serving their communities. Second, we believe everyone who breaks the law must be held accountable, including union members. We can never and will never justify criminal activity. Third, collective bargaining is not the enemy. The enemy is a broken justice system that in too many cases fails to hold perpetrators of police violence accountable. And finally, we believe that the best way to use our influence on the issue of police misconduct is to engage with our police affiliates rather than isolate them. We're committed to doing what's hard and meaningful instead of what's quick and easy.
Do you think things will be changed? Do you think there will be police reform, either whether through legislation, through collective bargaining, some other way? Do you think things will change going forward with respect to how we police our police?
I absolutely do think that, because all of us are committed and determined to make that happen. We're not going to let this opportunity just be another in a long line of injustices and discrimination toward people of color. I think the killing of George Floyd was the absolute straw that broke the camel's back. And so we're determined, we're joining with our allies, our friends, our community groups to make sure that this is an opportunity where we do change things. And as President Obama said, it's not like we don't have the playbook. We do have the playbook to make this happen. We just have to make sure that the playbook gets executed and followed. And we're determined to join with groups like Black Lives Matter and other groups to make sure that those reforms are not only instituted, but lived by from here on out.
So Richard, the police members who are members of your union are only some of the state and local employees that you represent. Talk to us about the stimulus, the so-called stimulus package. We heard different reports. On the one hand, Nancy Pelosi wants to go ahead right away. The Speaker of the House, President Trump, says there's not that big a rush, although we may need something. The jobs numbers today, does they take some of the steam out of getting some more stimulus soon?
Well, David, just let me reconcile the figures first. In May, we added 2.5 million jobs. But remember, in March and April, we lost 22 million. So we're still down 19.6 million jobs. The official unemployment rate is 13.3%, and that's a welcome improvement over April. But aside from April, it's still worse than anything we've seen since the Great Depression. And the unemployment rate does not reflect all coronavirus-related job losses. In fact, only about 2/3 of the people who remain out of work as a result of the virus are showing up unemployed. Listen to this. About 15%, or 4.9 million of those out of work because of the virus are being misclassified. They've been furloughed, and they should have been counted as unemployed or temporarily laid off, but instead they're being counted as employed but not at work. And roughly a fifth, or 6.6 million of those out of work because of the virus are being counted as having dropped out of the labor force. That's because jobless people only get counted as unemployed if they're actively seeking work, which remains impossible for a number of them. So if all 32.5 million workers who are out of work as a result of the virus has shown up as unemployed, the unemployment rate would have been 19.7% in May instead of 13.3. 19.7 or 13.3 demands immediate action. It doesn't say wait. And by the way, 16.2 million people have already lost their health care, and more every day. That has to be remedied. The HEROES Act has to be passed.
So all that said, how confident are you that the HEROES Act will be passed, and more important, perhaps, when?
Well, the pressure continues to build. If you look at the rate right now in Kentucky, in Mitch McConnell's home state, you have over 40% of the people in Kentucky of pre-pandemic labor force have filed for regular unemployment benefits. 40% in his own state. And he says, wait, there's nothing to do. And if you're in Georgia, it's actually 45%. Numbers are staggering. And so the pressure continues to build, and he continues to do nothing at his own peril. He and other people running on that same do-nothing ticket, or let's wait, while people suffer, and die, and get laid off more and more. He does so at his own peril. So I think the pressure mounts. I think we do get the HEROES Act passed, and I think we get it done in the month of June.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. Always a treat to have you with us. That is Richard Trumka. He is the president of the AFL-CIO. And a programming note, later today, Wall Street Week is back, and we'll be joined by Mona Mahajan of Allianz and by Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary, to talk about those jobs numbers that we got today. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
In a world pandemic, wild theories abound. This is beginning to percolate. One source that's expert, honest, and current. Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene.
You try to avoid the losers.
Jonathan Farrow.
We've got the potential for the value trap.
And Lisa Abramowitz.
What's the risk for financial stability?
Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. And now, watch us on Bloomberg Television.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. The university helped biomedical engineering professor Tara Alvarez launch a startup that may revolutionize vision therapy.
Our startup through NJIT is called Ocular Motor Technology. We create virtual reality vision therapy in a head-mounted display. So it's gaming, and basically we're sugarcoating the therapy so that children and young adolescents don't even realize they're doing therapy. To accomplish this, we need biomedical engineers, which are here on NJIT campus, computer scientists, artists, people that are into story development, and then we're collaborating with a lot of the large pediatric medical centers. This idea of a startup culture is extremely important to not just NJIT and the National Science Foundation, but also to the U.S. as a societal whole.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is Balanced Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Well, President Trump took a victory lap today, earlier, about those remarkable jobs numbers that came in so much better than anyone expected them to. And for more, we're now turned to Kevin Cirilli. He's our chief Washington correspondent. So, Kevin, the president's none too unhappy with those numbers, I'd say.
No, he is not. And in fact, it was a pleasant surprise, I'm told, by White House administration officials, as well as from Republican members of Congress. Here's the thinking inside of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and the re-election campaign. If they can continue, David, with this trend of positive economic data month after month, they will be able to say that it's their administration, their set of conservative ideology that is going to rebound the economy, a contrast they hope to make with the Biden campaign. Now, of course, this was a good morning in what has otherwise been a tumultuous week inside of the nation's capital, marked by protests and unrest throughout the city.
Yeah, at the same time, I guess my question is, in terms of politics, in terms of the election, is it more important that they're adding jobs at the rate of 2.5 million or more per month, or that, in fact, they lost more than 40 million? That's a big hole to fill. They got a long way. At the rate of 2.5 per month, they're not going to get there by November.
Precisely. And their argument, and I was speaking with two Republican House members earlier this morning about this, because, you know, it is, the numbers, David, are just, we've talked about this before, just so hard to grasp and so difficult to understand. But they're saying, according to their perspective, if that they would be able to reopen, to rebuild faster than a Democratic-controlled House and Senate, and, of course, a Democrat in the White House. And, in fact, I did speak with a source at the Treasury Department earlier today who said, essentially, collectively, they were breathing a sigh of relief, and that they're hopeful that this could be the start of a broader trend of positive economic indicators.
Well, that's good news for the White House, and I'm almost reluctant to raise this because it seems like a cheap shot, but it isn't. Vice President Biden, on, I guess, a virtual meeting with supporters, said yesterday that 10 to 15% of Americans were bad people. What was that about? Are they walking back off of that? How are they handling that?
So they're trying to walk back on that, but this comes at a time in which it's very much reminiscent of the Hillary Clinton deplorable comment. From the Biden campaign's perspective, they are trying to reestablish, to rebuild the Obama coalition, many of which faltered for Hillary Clinton in the last cycle. So from their perspective, they want to unify the African-American vote. They want to build upon the midterm elections in suburbs, but they also need a strong turnout. It's not just about the percentage numbers in terms of demographics. It's about boosting that turnout, particularly among African Americans. So from their perspective, I think that's why you're seeing really the Biden campaign double down in terms of those conversations. And I spoke with a senior advisor to the vice president's campaign over the weekend who mentioned that much and saying they have to not just, again, rebuild that coalition, but make sure that there's a strong turnout.
Yeah, it's a strategy. Okay, thank you so much to Kevin Cerulli, our chief Washington correspondent, for that report from Washington. Coming up in the second hour of Balance of Power on radio, we're going to have two very special guests. Carly Fiorina, former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, and Tom Steyer, former presidential candidate. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. One of the world's most coveted collectible coins is coming to the market. The 1787 Brasher doubloon, the first gold coin struck in the U.S., is being offered privately at a $15 million asking price by a former Wall Street executive. Deals in the $4 billion U.S. rare coin market are often done privately with prices kept mum. Not keeping mum, high-fashion brands such as Versace, Saint Laurent, and Gucci, who have posted messages pledging solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement after recent lootings. It's a dicey public relations move. Brands are trying to gain credibility and rewrite their own past race controversies, despite the risk of appearing crass. Also rewriting the script, Hollywood. To restart halted productions while protecting against coronavirus, Hollywood heavyweights are recommending that scripts be changed to minimize touching, and that filmmakers use computer-generated images to replace real-life interactions on screen. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labor market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand-washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are surging. Treasuries fell after that jobs report this morning far surpassed analyst forecasts, bolstering expectations for the economy to rebound quickly from coronavirus lockdowns. S&P 500 index is heading for a third weekly advance, leaving the gauge up more than 40% from its March low. America's labor market defied forecasts for a depression-style surge in unemployment, signaling the economy's picking up faster than anticipated. A broad gauge of payrolls rose by 2.5 million in May, trouncing forecasts for a sharp decline. Here's where we stand. S&P up 87 points. That's a gain of 2.8%. NASDAQ up 209 points, up 2.2%, extending its year-to-date gain now to 9.5%. We did see NASDAQ trading at a record. The Dow up 946 points. That is a gain of 3.6%. 10-year's down 31/30 seconds. The yield on the 10-year now 0.92%. As for commodities trading today, we've got gold surging, West Texas Intermediate crude surging 5%. Gold is retreating 1.8%. And with more on commodities trading, here's Bloomberg's Renita Young.
Crude is heading for its 6th weekly gain after OPEC and its allies reached a tentative agreement to prolonging its
its record production cuts, and U.S. jobs data were better than expected. The cartel will hold a round of meetings on Saturday to extend record cutbacks by at least a month, and gold heads for the longest run of weekly losses since September. Renita Young, Bloomberg Radio.
And again, worth repeating, the West Texas Intermediate crude up by 5%, $39.26 a barrel. Got to touch on the travel names. They are some of today's big winners. Carnival Corp up 22%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings surging 22.7%. Royal Caribbean up 21.9%. Airlines, again, big winners today. American Airlines up by 17%. United Airlines Holdings up today by 14%. Delta surging 9.5%. And the last of the big four U.S. airlines, Southwest, up right now by 5.2%. 102 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are keeping pace with the gains in U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is up about 2.8%, and the S&P 500 is now higher by 2.7%. China's JD.com has risen 4% in U.S. trading. The online marketplace plans to raise $4.1 billion in its first ever share sale in Hong Kong. The move follows a $2.7 billion sale this week by Chinese mobile gaming company NetEase. Now, airline ADRs are climbing along with shares of U.S. peers on anticipation of a rebound in air travel. Singapore Airlines has gained more than 15.5%. British Airways owner IAG has advanced more than 13%. And French plane maker Airbus has added more than 12.5%. Now, gold mining ADRs are lower after that U.S. jobs report eased demand for the precious metal as a haven. Canada's Barrick Gold has dropped 3.7%, and Kinross Gold has lost 3.6%. South Africa's Anglo Gold Ashanti has slipped 7.2%, and Gold Fields has fallen 4.8%. And Germany's Wirecard has declined 9.5%. The payment processor said its premises were searched as part of an investigation into members of its management board. Now, Wirecard said it isn't a target of the probe, Charlie.
All right, we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, keeping track of those ADRs. The weekly rig count numbers are out, down by 17, according to Baker Hughes, now at 284. Recapping, stocks surge after this morning's shocker of a jobs report. S&P up 86, up by 2.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
Everybody in the world has one common enemy, and that's to win the war against this virus.
The first thing you do is listen to the medical professionals.
Those people that lost their pay, we want to see that pay continued.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
Our priority is the health and well-being and the lives of the American people.
We want to make sure that we are continuing to support our hospitals.
We've unleashed our most potent weapon of all, the courage of the American people.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Jobs numbers come in dramatically better than expected. Protests continue around the country in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd, but with less violence. And two presidential campaigns struggle with how to campaign in the middle of a pandemic, a financial downturn, and civil unrest. From New York, welcome to the second hour of Bloomberg Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. Markets have been going up relentlessly for the last 50 days following their precipitous drop. And until now, there's been precious little in the economic numbers to justify it. But today, U.S. job numbers came in stunningly better than expected. Instead of losing 7.5 million jobs, the economy actually created 2.5 million. To help us understand what is going on, we welcome now Carly Fiorina, founder and chairman of Carly Fiorina Enterprises and Unlocking Potential, and former Hewlett-Packard CEO. So, Carly, so great to have you back with us. Thank you for being here. What do you make of these jobs numbers? Is this one swallow doesn't make a spring or something?
Well, it's so funny, Dave, because I'm listening to your intro. Very kind. I'm not sure I can help your listeners understand what's going on.
Yes, you can.
I'm as stunned as anyone, honestly. I mean, you know, when forecasters are off by 8 or 10 million jobs, that's a big miss. And I must say, obviously, it's fantastic news. What's confusing to me about the news, I would say, is it is inconsistent with what we've seen recently with consumer spending. It's inconsistent with comments from the Fed. It's inconsistent with data from industrial output. It's inconsistent with export data. And so what that suggests to me is that this is the low-hanging fruit of the jobs that were temporarily lost as a result of the pandemic. And people, if you look at the data, what you see is, of course, where you'd expect it. Leisure and hospitality, restaurants, some retail. On the other hand, you also see, when you look at that data, persistent inequity. So African American joblessness remains way elevated above the average, and that's very different than the progress that was being made pre-COVID. Hispanic employment the same, although a bit less. And so what I don't yet know, number one, is whether there will be any revision to this data, and what I continue to believe is that this is not a V-shaped recovery, because we are still at a highly elevated level of unemployment, 13-point-something%. And so it's hard to declare victory over that. But today was a very good day, without a doubt.
To pick up on that, we created 2.5 million jobs, which is, as you say, 10 million better than we thought we were going to do. At the same time, we lost well over 40 million. So at that rate, It's going to take an awful long time to get everybody back to work. I want to pick up on what you talked about, some of the inequalities, because one of the things that jumped out at many of us was that unemployment went down for whites, went down for some for Hispanics to some extent. They actually went up slightly for African Americans. And of all weeks for that to happen, this week, where you put together the remarkable rise in the markets with really the dissension, the anger, the hurt across the country coming out of the incident of George Floyd, trying to put those two things together is very difficult.
Yes, it is. And what's distressing about those numbers is we have known for a really long time, whether it's on a company-specific basis or a national basis or a state basis, that the pattern we see over and over again is that African Americans, followed by Hispanics, followed by women in many cases, are the last to be hired and the first to be fired. And you see that in this data, that whites in general, white men in particular, tend to be the ones that get the jobs first and are laid off last. So that's been a problem for a long time, unfortunately. And it's why the economic data from, let's say, January was so encouraging, because it said, unemployment in the African American community has reached an historic low. And that was great news. What's distressing about the report today is it suggests the fundamental pattern of last hired, first fired has not shifted.
And we've seen it specifically, just in short compass over the last 3 months or so, with respect to COVID, because, in fact, African Americans were disproportionately losing jobs on the way down. And now they are, if anything, disproportionately not getting jobs on the way back up, just to your point.
That's right.
So that's been a long-term trend, but we've seen it over the last 90 days here played out. What can be done about it?
Well, so the trend, just to reiterate, the trend is first fired, last hired. And to your point, that's what we just saw play out over the last 90 days, and that pattern continues. Look, I have said in a variety of public settings over the last several weeks that as business people, we are driven by data and fact, we hope. And the data is crystal clear, and the facts are long-standing. We have structural inequities in our economy. We have systemic racism in our country. These are just facts. The data is crystal clear. Not only are, let's just say, African Americans last hired, first fired, there is not equal treatment under the law for African Americans. I mean, the data is just crystal clear. Why do I say that? Because I start with what I know about problem solving. Right. If you cannot see the truth, the data, the facts, and speak it, then you will not act on it.
Right.
And so as a nation, we got to see it and speak it so that we can act on it.
And we're going to talk about it some more just in a moment because Carly Fiorina will be staying with us in part to discuss her latest LinkedIn newsletter on challenges ahead for the class of 2020. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Business and finance have always held surprises, but this is brand new.
The move risks fueling more demonstrations, and Stokes' concern that essential freedoms will be curbed.
Karen Muskow and Nathan Hager.
Chinese lawmakers approved national security legislation.
Expert navigation through uncharted territory.
Tell us the range of outcomes that we could see on that front.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
At Bloomberg, we know a lot of financial experts.
He's a former president of the European Central Bank.
Your Global Financial Warriors is a classic textbook.
A lot of political experts.
If you were advising the President of the United States, what's the thing that he's not doing that he should do?
And lucky for you, we know a lot of science experts, too.
You talked about those reagents which are necessary for the testing. It's also the behavioral psychological approach.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
At Lloyds Bank, we know that money is a concern for a lot of people during this time.
You just put pressure on yourself all the time. You just want to do your absolute best.
You automatically then think,
it's my fault.
Yeah, this is because I've not
done X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I've not raised them right.
Whatever's playing on your mind at the moment, Lloyds Bank, in partnership with Mental Health UK, can offer you support and advice. Visit lloydsbank.com/mentalhealth.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Big day for the U.S. stock market. Stocks are surging. Treasuries are falling after this morning's jobs report, a shocker of a report that far surpassed analysts' forecasts, bolstering expectations for the U.S. economy to rebound quickly from coronavirus lockdowns. S&P 500 index now up 2.8%, up 87 points at 3199, actually 3200 even right now. We've got the Dow up 919 points, up 3.5%. NASDAQ is up 209 points. That is a gain of 2.2%. Should point out that in the year-to-date column, NASDAQ showing a gain of 9.5%. Indeed, NASDAQ did hit a record today. S&P year-to-date is down by 1%, to put that in context. 10-year down 29.30 seconds. Yield right now 0.92%. Gold down 2%, 16.80 the ounce, and a surge in West Texas Intermediate crude of 5.2%, 39.35 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. I'm David Weston. Carla Fiorina has a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn called Leadership Matters. And this week, she's written on the timely topic of challenges facing this class of 2020. And perhaps even more pertinently, some advice, not for the class, but for their parents. And Carla, you don't know this, I don't think, but you're directing it exactly at me because my youngest child graduates from high school this coming Tuesday, virtually, I must say. But it all has to do with destination questions. Take us through it.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the accomplishment of your child. And look, imagine for a moment you're a high school senior or a college senior and you're graduating virtually. I mean, this is not what you expected. It kind of sucks for them, right?
It does, actually. That's right.
And yet their accomplishment is real. And the lessons that they have learned through this about life is unpredictable and we need to accept setback and we can't control our circumstances and resiliency matters. All those are incredibly important lessons that hopefully people will have learned. But there's also another thing that hasn't changed, and that is that everyone around a graduate loads expectations onto them. Your parents load expectations onto you. Your peer group loads expectations onto you. And from the moment you graduate high school, let's just start with that, it's what are you going to do? What are you going to major in? Where are you going to go to school? What job do you want? There are all of these questions and these expectations about the destination to which you should aspire. And my advice to people, based on my own personal experience, but observing many others over the course of my life, is that when we get too hung up on a destination, I want to go to this college, I want this job, I want to make this much money by this time, then what happens is we miss so many of the opportunities that are all around us that are actually those that will help us unlock our potential most effectively. And so when I'm asked what is my one piece of advice for young people, I say get a job, any job. It doesn't matter what the job is. It doesn't matter if it's the perfect job. Just get a job and do that job to the very best of your ability, because whatever job it is, and my first job was typing for a 9-person real estate firm. Whatever job it is, if you do it well, people will notice and opportunity will knock. And you'll learn a lot about yourself and you'll learn a lot about the world around you. And when opportunity knocks, don't be afraid to answer the call and walk through the door. And as you proceed in the adventure called life, think about who you are and how you do things, because that will shape your character, it will shape your life, and ultimately it will shape the nature of the opportunities that come your way.
And as parents, we want that for our children because we want them to have happy, rewarding, fulfilling lives. But even in the workplace, if you can have employees that have resiliency, who realize their best potential, they are frankly much more valuable to the institution than somebody who's rigidly locked into one path.
That's right. That's exactly right. And let us also acknowledge that, of course, we want our children to be happy and be successful, but we actually don't learn as much in the easy times as we learn in the tough times. You and I have talked about this before, David, but you know that old saying, tough time builds character. It's actually not true. Tough times reveal character. And it is during the tough times that we understand how resilient we are. It's in the tough times that we say, you know what, I didn't get exactly the job I wanted, or I didn't get into exactly the school I wanted, but here I am, and I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm going to do the best job I can, and I will be better as a result of that, but I also can help other people be better. Those are lessons that last the test of time, because I've seen a ton of people have a plan for their life. I'm going to hit certain milestones by certain times. Sometimes they get there, and they're disappointed by what it turns out to be. Sometimes they don't get there, and they're bitter that they didn't. And frequently, they may get there, but they may have missed so many other opportunities along the way that might have enriched their lives even more.
And to take that point, which is so true, and even one step further, I have said more than once, and I thoroughly believe it, I don't think I ever learned anything from a success, but I have learned from failure. When I have come up short, when I have not done the job I thought I should do, or I was not appreciated where I was, every time I can tell you what I learned from that and how it took me forward to be more successful in another job.
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes I think we use the word failure. It sounds so heavy. We really the words we ought to use are mistake or setback, because we all make mistakes all throughout life, and we all have setbacks all throughout life. It doesn't have to be as heavy as a huge failure. Who was it? Some great inventor said there's no such thing as failure. There's only learning what not to do a second time. And I think that's a really important attitude if we want to be resilient. Yes, we learn from the tough times. The other thing that I would say, David, to you and to every other parent, I was a medieval history and philosophy major. I dropped out of law school after about 8 weeks. I went to work typing for a 9-person real estate firm. I mean, I did not have a sterling resume. So if your child is concerning you right now, don't panic. Don't panic.
Good advice. I'll take that to heart. That's
and then I ran away to Italy for a year to teach English. So then my parents were really concerned.
By the way, I was a philosophy major too, so good for us. Thank you so much to Carly Fiorina. It's always great to have you with. She's chairman and founder of Carly Fiorina Enterprises and Online Potential. Coming up next, we're going to talk with former presidential candidate Tom Steyer about the economy and opening California back up. And this is Bloomberg.
This is the Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are climbing on optimism. The economy is making a rebound from the coronavirus lockdowns. The Dow is up 948 points to 27,215. NASDAQ up 204 points. S&P up 86. May's jobs report shows a very quick rebound from the pandemic lockdowns. Rather than a loss of 7.5 million jobs, the economy added 2.5 million jobs, and the unemployment rate came in at 13.3%. Travel-related stocks are up today amid optimism about people taking trips again. Airline and car-related shares are headed for their best weekly performance since the beginning of April. And Simon Properties, the mall owner, is up 17%, the highest since March, on hopes that shoppers will be returning to malls. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis. Concise reporting. Need to know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed, retrieve data fast. Scalability, grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity, easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slapshot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
For a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL Draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL Show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Brayton and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
The Woj Pod with Adrian Wojnarowski.
Doris, you had reason to believe that you needed to get a test for the coronavirus.
Right. Well, I mean, let's just start with the headline, which is I did test positive for COVID-19. I was so tired from Saturday the 14th through Tuesday, March 17th. I kid you not, I could not be out of bed for 5 minutes without needing to go back to bed and lay down.
Search the Woj Pod to listen.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, opening the California economy back up. We talk with Tom Steyer, chair of California's Task Force on Business and Jobs Recovery, about his plans for the state. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much, David Weston. Stocks are surging, but first want to pass along two headlines from the Bloomberg Professional Service. First of all troops in the D.C. region have been ordered to return to home base. This, according to a report from CBS. Also in New Jersey, the number of virus cases up 0.5% versus the prior 7-day average of 0.4%. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all jumping today. Treasuries fell after that jobs report far surpassed analyst forecast, bolstering expectations for the economy to rebound quickly from coronavirus lockdowns. Here's where we stand. S&P up 91 at 3204. That is a gain of 3% today. Should point out that in the year-to-date column on the Bloomberg, the S&P is down 0.8%. The Dow's up 968 points today, up by 3.7%. NASDAQ is up 221 points. That is a surge of 2.3%, bringing its year-to-date gain to 9.6%. While the unemployment rate at 13.3% is still shockingly high by historic standards, markets are riding a wave of enthusiasm today as investors bet on a global economy awash with stimulus. Administration reaction to the numbers from Larry Kudlow, director of the National Economic Council, who spoke this morning with Bloomberg Radio and Television.
I don't think today's numbers was a one-time thing. I mean, the business openings by May 12th, the survey week, was less than 50% small business. But the Chamber of Commerce down here is estimating now in early June, nearly 80% of small businesses have reopened.
Oil is on track for a 6-weekly gain, boosted by a tentative OPEC Plus deal to extend production cuts. Today, West Texas Intermediate crude is surging 5.3%, $39.38 a barrel. Gold down 1.9%, $16.81 the ounce, and the 10-year down 31 seconds with a yield right now of 0.92%. Briefly checking some of the big major oil companies, ExxonMobil surging right now by 8.2%. BP, the ADRs up 8.6%. EOG Resources up 7.3%. Pioneer Natural Resources up by 6.5%. Recapping, major rally underway on this Friday. The S&P up 92, a gain there of 3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that, David Weston, is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Tom Steyer has had a wide range of jobs through his career as a successful investor and hedge fund manager, as a philanthropist, as founder of NextGen, as an activist on issues like the climate, healthcare, and immigration, and as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for president. Now he has a new job, chairing California Governor Gavin Newsom's task force on business and jobs recovery. And we welcome Mr. Steyer now back to Bloomberg. Great to have you back with us, Tom. Thank you for being here. I want to talk about California and your plans for California, but I have to spend a minute on these jobs numbers first, the national jobs numbers. What do you make of them? Is the economy overall nationally opening back up faster than we thought it was?
Well, first of all, I think you have to be happy as an American that people are going back to work. And you have to be happy when the unemployment rate drops by 1.5 points. And this is exactly what Governor Newsom has been working on and what California has been trying to do, which is the phase reopening of our economy, which is to carefully, with health as the number one priority, to reopen the economy with protocols so that people are safe, but get people back to work and back earning money. Exactly what our reopening is about, what Governor Newsom has been working so hard on. So you have to be happy when you see the numbers come in and see that people are back to work. I think you also have to note, and I think it's really important at this point, David, to point out that African American employment didn't come back last month, that unemployment rate ticked up a little, And at a time when people are rightfully aware of equity across the economy, and I know that Governor Newsom is very aware that we come out in a way that's more just and equitable, we have to make sure that as the tide rises, that it actually lifts all boats. But in general, you have to be happy when Americans are working.
Well, I'm so glad you raised that issue of black employment, because it's striking in part because if you look at the numbers, African Americans and Hispanics, but African Americans lost jobs at a faster rate on the way down going into this pandemic. And you would hope that they would come back, therefore, perhaps faster. And in fact, African Americans, particularly more than Hispanics, African Americans, it looks like it's, last hired, first fired sort of principle. Is there anything we can do about that, or is that just inherent in the nature of the jobs that are coming back and the order in which they're coming?
Well, I don't think there's any question, but there's something we have to do about it.
Yeah.
Look, I think that there is an increasing awareness, David, across America of structural racism. And, our task force has in its mission statement, at its heart, an idea that we need to put people back to work, but that we need to do it in a just and equitable way and in a sustainable and resilient way. And so that's why I tempered, look, it's absolutely great when Americans go back to work and Californian economy opens up. But we have to, dig in a little under the surface and be aware that the very thing that is roiling our society about structural racism, as we've seen in terms of police violence towards black men, that's not just a policing issue. There's something deeper, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. Because if we're going to come out of this, I know Governor Newsom's goal is, and our task force's goal is to come out better, not to go back to January of 2020, but to have a better vision of what we're trying to accomplish and make that happen. So when you say, is there something we can do? Yes, but it's not just policing. It is, we've said every decision in our task force, every recommendation we make to the governor will be made with the idea of justice and equity, and particularly holding the underserved communities, the black and brown communities in our state, in the front of our minds to make sure that what the numbers show is happening doesn't continue. That in fact, the policies support them disproportionately because black and brown communities have paid a heavier price in terms of health and a heavier price in terms of economics and job loss.
So, Tom, let's talk about your task force and the work you're doing. And I'll ask you whether there are specific challenges for California in opening back up because of the nature of some of your biggest, most important industries, things like Hollywood, movie making, and things like that, things like tourism that almost require a fair amount of proximity and people getting together in groups and even in closed places to some extent. Does that make it particularly difficult for you?
Well, the California economy is huge and diverse, David. And so there are parts of the economy that are particularly hard hit, as you said, like tourism and hospitality. But let me say there are also parts of the California economy that are going to do really, as a result of this, are going to get a tailwind and not a headwind. And that includes things like the information technology world and the online world, which is also centered in California. But let's talk for a second about what you brought up. Look, California has a huge hospitality and tourism industry, and that is something that is especially hard hit. And we have to make sure that the workers in those industries are safe and that the customers are safe, because that's the way to get the most robust, powerful recovery is to put health first, the way Governor Newsom has and continues to assure the health of the people working in those industries and their customers. In terms of the film industry, that is one where there's been an enormous amount of work going in to protocols to protect people across the board. And I think that industry will be conducted in a different way. And I think, the effort that the governor and his staff are putting in terms of the rules of the road, the kinds of things about social distancing and masking and washing your hands, the basics to protect people are things that are specific to each industry, and I know that an enormous amount of work is going into the film industry specifically because it's such an important part of California.
I'm delighted to say that Tom Steyer will be staying with us. We'll continue to talk about the economy. We'll also expand into politics some. That's coming up next on Bloomberg Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
If knowledge is... This is an important update from the government about coronavirus. We all need to stay alert so we can control the virus and reduce the risk of infection. Staying alert means you must stay at home as much as possible. Work from home if you can. Limit contact with others. Keep your distance if you go out. And wash your hands regularly. Do not leave home if you or anyone in your household has symptoms. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
At Tesco, we've price-matched Aldi on hundreds of products, like bananas, peppers, chicken breasts, mushrooms, Warburton's bread, strawberries, even avocados. That's Tesco products at Aldi prices. Because now more than ever, every little helps. Tesco. Prices checked on comparable products from GBLD stores and online twice weekly. Price most often found matched excluding promotions. Selected Tesco stores excluding Express and all Northern Ireland stores. Products and their availability vary weekly and by store. Details at tesco.com/Aldi price match.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's Six bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be two champions on the field tomorrow night, and there's going to be one team hold up the trophy.
Right to the 5! Touchdown! Search Classic Game Replays to listen for free.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening. Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
The Woj Pod with Adrian Wojnarowski.
Doris, you had reason to believe that you needed to get a test for the coronavirus.
Right. Well, let's just start with the headline, which is I did test positive for COVID-19. I was so tired from Saturday the 14th through Tuesday, March 17th. I kid you not, I could not be out of bed for 5 minutes without needing to go back to bed and lay down.
Search the Woj Pod to listen.
It's headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are jumping on bets that the economy is ready to roar back. We are trading close to session highs right now, looking at an 89-point jump in the S&P 500 index, up 2.9%. NASDAQ is up 212 points. That is a gain of 2.2%. The Dow surging 930 points, now up 3.5%. Stocks rallying, treasuries falling after a jobs report that far surpassed analyst forecasts, bolstered expectations for the economy to rebound quickly from coronavirus lockdowns. We've got the 10-year down 30 seconds. Yield is now 0.92% on this Friday. Gold dropping 1.9%, $16.81 the ounce. A surge in West Texas Intermediate crude, now higher by 5.6%. Closing in on $40 a barrel. Right now, WTI is at $39.51. Again, recapping, S&P up 88. That is a gain of 2.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. David?
Thank you so much, Charlie. From New York, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. Every presidential election year is historic in its own way, but this one seems especially so, with a controversial incumbent and the nation facing simultaneous crises of a global pandemic, a sharp economic downturn, and civil unrest in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. Former presidential candidate Tom Steyer is still with us. So, Tom, give us a sense right now from the Democratic side of what the issues are, and in particular, does it look like maybe the issue of the economy, which it appeared would really favor Democrats, may be slipping away?
Well, David, as I said before the break, I am incredibly happy that Americans are going back to work, and specifically that California is reopening and people are getting a paycheck again. That is absolutely fantastic. But I don't think this is time to hang out the mission accomplished sign. I mean, we still have the highest unemployment in the post-World War II era. We still have to deal with an economic crisis, and that's exactly what my task force is focused on, to support Governor Newsom in dealing with that economic crisis. We still have the health crisis you were talking about, and we have a huge issue which you were describing as civil unrest, which is part of it. But I think much deeper than that is a question about whether Americans are one people who are going to join together to solve their divisions and also deal with the first two issues, which is exactly what Joe Biden stands for. Or are we going to be a country that is pulled apart from the top, that has a leader who tries to divide us for political purposes? And I think that's a huge question for America in 2020 is, are we in fact going to acknowledge and accept each other as full Americans and, complete human beings.
So, Tom, that is a very
fundamental question in front of us right now.
A very fair point. And civil unrest, in my view at least, is the symptom and is not the disease. There's economic and other injustice in the country, I believe at least, that it gives rise to that and is fomenting civil unrest that was triggered, of course, by that awful killing of George Floyd. But let's talk about what a democratic plan to address that problem is. And is it something that is other than more government and more taxes?
Gosh, of course it's more than that. David, first of all, let's start with what a president can do. A president explains the world to Americans. So under the circumstance of George Floyd's murder, Joe Biden called his family. Joe Biden acknowledged the structural racism in America. Joe Biden strove and is striving to pull people together. He's showing compassion, understanding, a need for healing, and he's showing leadership. And that is exactly what this country has been missing. And so it's not just a question about government programs and taxes. Of course, we need to address structural underlying issues, but it's much more than that. It's the great leaders explain the world to people. And what we're seeing on the streets is a broad change in America, I believe, David, and an awareness, not just in the African American community, that there has been structural racism against African Americans and police violence specifically against African American men, but that sense broadly across the country, a shared sense of that, particularly with young people, that is long overdue. You know, when I was running for president, I said I would have a commission on race on the first day of my presidency, and I'm for reparations. And I think at the time that seemed, you know, on the edge. But I think people are coming around much more to the understanding that this is not a symptom, that there is an underlying structural racism that has existed for generations, decades, and centuries, and that as a country, we have to address it directly, together, for us all to move forward. It's not an African-American problem. It's an American problem.
Tom, when you were running for president, you had, and I'm sure still have, a powerful vision for reforming the structure of government. One of your theses was there's a problem with the structure of government we have to address. What about the structure of the economy? And I'm talking about the national economy, but including in California. As you talked about how to bring California back, there would be some parts of the industry that would be benefited, some that would be disbenefited. Will the economy look different coming out of this pandemic, these three crises we face? Will it look different, and how should it look different?
Well, let's just start by, because the question you asked, David, was about how the pandemic will change things. You can see that the pandemic is breaking some things, and it is exacerbating trends that already existed in the economy. So if you, and I was trying to talk about that before the break. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, were people buying more things online before the coronavirus showed up? Yes. Did this exacerbate that trend? Absolutely. You know, were people using telehealth, doing doctors, appointments online before coronavirus showed up? Sure they did. But I talked to the head of one of the huge health systems in California who told me that 80% of their doctor's appointments now are now telehealth. So that, were people using online means to supplement education before coronavirus? Sure. But, we have whole universities that have gone online. Right. So that there has been, the coronavirus has exacerbated what happened before. What we need to be sure coming out, and Governor Newsom is very focused on this, is we need to make sure that as we come out, we have in mind the inequities that the coronavirus is exposing.
Well, exactly
and the
right.
Inequities that it's exacerbating. We were talking about the jobs numbers today. They were worse for black people.
And some of the things, Tom, you mentioned specifically play to people who have more rather than have less. Things like telehealth, things like learning remotely, things like working from home. That is more available to people of means than to people without means. So are we making it worse?
We have to, it can be worse, so we have to address that, David. So, for instance, one of the things our task force is absolutely focused on, and the governor's been focused on even before coronavirus, is the code words are bridging the digital divide.
Yeah.
If kids are going to do some of their education online, they have to have access to high-speed internet. If telehealth is going to be how people go to the doctor, families need to be hooked up to high-speed internet. If retraining, upskilling, putting people back to work in better paying jobs is going to be done to some extent over the internet, you have to have access. There's a perfect equity and productivity issue in front of us.
A challenge and an opportunity. Tom Steyer, thank you so much for being with us. Please come back. We have a lot more to talk about. That does it for Balance of Power from Bloomberg for this week. I'm David Weston. Thank you so much for joining us.
At the start of
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Dear Dad, Happy Father's Day. You are my rock, my go-to guy. Whenever I call, you're happy just to listen. You've always been there for me, by my side. I don't know how you put up with my piano playing all those years. Hang on, kiddo. I'll listen in a sec. I miss you. See you soon. Love you lots, Luce. This Father's Day, send love straight to Dad's door with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Braden and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, it is a Friday edition. What a Friday it is. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser here with you. And WOA, as Carol Masser might say. And as Cameron Kreis, our stocks columnist, said, his jaw on the floor this morning as we saw those jobs numbers and the ensuing market rally. We're going to get into all of that. Bloomberg anticipated this in some ways, but a lot of economists did not. Let's get into the numbers first and dig into it in a minute. Charlie Pellet, he's got a look at the trade.
Thank you very much, Jason Kelly. Finally, because there's a headline on the Bloomberg that says economists have the biggest whiff ever as the U.S. jobs report surprises. Fascinating report. Ask the question, how did economists bungle this one so badly? Here's where we stand in terms of numbers. S&P up 89, a gain there of 2.9%. NASDAQ up 214 right now. That is an advance of 2.2%. And after this morning's jobs shocker, the Dow up 928 points, up 3.5%. In the year-to-date column, NASDAQ is now up by 9.5%. To put that in context, S&P is down by 0.9%. Tenured on 29/30 seconds, yield there 0.92%. Gold down 1.9%. 16.81 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude surging 5.6% now, 39.50 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's jump right into it. The Business Week agenda, it is a robust one today, to say the least. Vincent Signorella here with us to give us some context. He is global macro strategist for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from White Plains. And Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg, joining us on the remote line from New Jersey. So, Dave, I guess give us the overview here, because we're still trying to wrap our heads around this market and its reaction.
Well, I mean, you're really seeing a broad-based advance, no question, and it's one being led by the more economically sensitive areas of the market. No surprise, because the jobs report certainly suggests that the economy is in better shape than a whole lot of economists had been thinking, and perhaps a whole lot of investors as well. I mean, you got energy stocks, by far the best performers on the day in the S&P 500. West Texas Intermediate, the benchmark U.S. crude, approaching $40 a barrel, which it hasn't seen for the last 3 months. Then you look, you see financial shares, industrial stocks, raw material producers, all 11 of the main industry groups in the S&P 500 up at least 1.7%. Wow. And in terms of individual shares, you only have 31 down in the S&P 500 right now.
So everybody's just all in, Dave, right?
It sure looks that way, and a whole lot of speculative buying, arguably, in the travel stocks. You look at how the airlines are doing. Yeah. Cruise lines, you've got Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and Norwegian all up more than 20% in today's trading. I mean, that's quite the move for a group which has certainly seen a whole lot of those kinds of moves, mostly down this year.
So, Vince Signorella, come on in on the conversation. I'm just curious, on the macro squawk desk, what are the types of conversations? And I'm curious, when that jobs number crossed, was everybody like, what?
What exactly? What? I think Mike McKee made a really good point this morning when he said, and I think this is maybe very well the case, that PPP may have moved people from unemployed to employed, even if they weren't working, as they essentially were getting paid. It goes to the story that when you return to work, you're not supposed to get the PPP, so it's supposed to wash out, right? The employer is supposed to report that you're working, and if you decide not to take the job back, the employer is supposed to report that you quit, so that you can't receive unemployment. So that's the way things are supposed to smooth at the back end. I think the reality of the situation is, you look at these numbers, and if you're bullish, you say this is amazing. The economy's roaring ahead a lot faster than we thought it was. And if you're bearish, you're looking at this and saying you just can't believe the numbers. On the latter, I would say about a 46% bounce off the low. I don't know a trader who'd still be working if they were still short from being down there. So you can't really fight the tape, and you can't really fight the Fed.
Fight the tape, but can you, is there some point in your, logical side of the brain, I know we all have one, that you say, okay, this has been a nice bounce. Now let's see what kind of economic bounce we ultimately get. This is one data point.
It is one data point, excuse me, but I think this is what this is encouraging people, and then there are expectations that the data points will continue. Now, it would be interesting to see the next jobs report next month to see whether there's any pullback from this. Have we borrowed from the following month? Is this just a little bit of a bounce that we take back later? And then even if we have, it'll depend on how much. I think, I've talked to so many people who have missed this move. And even today, still hearing from people, you can't buy this, you can't buy this. And I'm like, how do you sell it? It may be irrational, but I think it's very, very, very much like 2009, where central banks are putting everything behind it, and you can't discount the fiscal stimulus. Nearly $3 trillion has been thrown at this. That is going to, at some point, provide economic growth.
And 2009, as we know, kicked off the longest bull run in history, if I've got my dates right.
Yeah, wasn't a bad time to step in.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Dave Wilson, give us a preview of your chart. How do you make sense of all this today?
Well, you look back at the history of moves like we've seen in the last couple of months and try to figure out how stocks have done. And the short answer is they've done very well, thank you.
Yeah, amazing. All right, we're looking forward to that. Dave Wilson, he'll be back with us at 3:30 with his chart of the day, and just after the close for his stock of the day. Our thanks, of course, to Vincent Signorella, global macro strategist for Bloomberg. Vince contributes to the aforementioned Macro Squawk Desk. It's a real-time curated news service. It's audio streamed directly through your Bloomberg terminal. Check it out at Squawk Go on your launch pad. A lot coming up, Carol.
Yeah, a lot coming up. And I think safe to say you put it nicely on our planning call. The surprise we got this morning, really reinforcing the fact on maybe how we might look back specifically at this week, the seismic shifts that are happening in our society on so many different fronts. We've got some great go-to voices. Chris Liu, former Deputy Secretary of Labor under the Obama administration and professor of law at the Yale Law School, Bloomberg opinion contributor Stephen Carter. He's written several really smart, insightful columns about what's going on, some in the magazine and certainly some on the Bloomberg.
Right. Renowned in many ways. Can't wait to catch up with him. And, of course, Chris Liu to talk not only, as you say, about these jobs numbers, but about the government right now, which we've been talking about the government in many different aspects today. Also, really looking forward to catching up with our friend Michael Ainsley. He is the former chairman of Lehman Brothers. We mentioned 2009 a minute ago. He was there in 2009 and in 2008 when Lehman went out of business. He saw the financial crisis firsthand, and always good to get his perspective. He's a Southerner, and I think he'll have a lot of interesting things to say about where we are right now.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of conversations as a result of Michael Ainsley, Candace Lee, John Ingram that we talked to about a week ago, and so really pulling together kind of what's going on in our society and bringing that to our listeners. And then we've got we've been reaching, I feel like, Jason, out to the sports industry, obviously the business, financial industry, retail, you name it, to kind of understand our world over the past few months and certainly this past week. So we're going to wrap up with a 40-year veteran tour manager of the music industry and really talk to him about how music can help us heal. I mean, he has worked with the Stones. He's worked with Fleetwood Mac. Marty Haum's going to be with us, and so I'm looking forward to that conversation.
We were talking about Beatles versus Stones yesterday. I have a feeling where he would land on that. All right, that's all coming up. Let's do the Bloomberg Business Week bite of the day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number is 2 billion. British drug maker AstraZeneca has doubled manufacturing capacity for its potential coronavirus vaccine to 2 billion doses in a handful of deals involving Microsoft billionaire Bill Gates that guarantee early supply to lower income countries. The deals with Epidemic Response Group CEPI and Vaccine Alliance Gavi are backed by the World Health Organization and aim to quell concerns that the company was committing all initial supplies of the vaccine to the developed world. This is a theme, Carol.
Yeah, absolutely. It's those big drug makers, and making sure that they've got enough and then spreading it around to the globe. So it's a big story. All right, lots to come over the next few hours. Right now, though, let's check in on world and national news headlines. For that, it's over to Nancy Lyons in our 99.1 studio in the nation's capital. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Carol. President Trump is patting himself on the back after today's jobs report showing a surprise gain of millions of jobs and a 13% unemployment rate.
This is a very big day for our country. It's affirmation of all the work we've been doing really for 3.5 years. This isn't just over the last few months. This is for 3.5 years. And it's a great thing. We were very strong. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We had the greatest economy in the history of the world.
Trump says he expects the U.S. economy to recover from the coronavirus outbreak even faster than predicted, but he is warning that could stop if bad policy is put in place, warning against electing Democrats in November. Trump this afternoon is traveling to Maine, where he'll be meeting with fishermen and going to a plant that makes swabs for coronavirus tests. Well, his opponent, Joe Biden, says he is disturbed by the president crowing over the jobs report.
Donald Trump still doesn't get it. He's out there spiking the ball, completely oblivious to the tens of millions of people who are facing the greatest struggle of their lives.
Biden says black unemployment skyrocketed in May, and more than 20 million Americans are still out of work. He says he'll lay out his economic plan in the coming weeks. Tomorrow's anniversary observances for the D-Day landings in Normandy will be one of the loneliest ever. The coronavirus pandemic is keeping almost everyone away, including the frail veterans who might not get another chance to give their unlucky comrades a final farewell. Even tomorrow's weather forecast is bad. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
How long? How much? How many? Financial, policy, and medical experts are working on answers 24/7.
What about public debt?
We are listening to those experts 24/7.
Is the Fed effectively widening this wealth gap with its programs?
Because you want answers too.
What's the most important, the trillions in stimulus, the economy's reopening, or the infections curve bending?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenge?
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed. Retrieve data fast. Scalability. Grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity. Easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
Thanks to National Lottery players, the Emerald Centre are now providing emergency food supplies and support for people in Bedfordshire like Alan. Thank you. And £600 million of National Lottery funding is on its way to thousands more local projects in England and across the UK during these exceptional times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
cars to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
At Asda, we've provided 3,500 care homes with priority access to delivery slots, and priority shopping hours are open to our care workers. We're also donating 250,000 face masks to care homes. Asda, we're all in this together. Please show ID for priority shopping. Check asda.com for times.
This is a message from the RNLI and Her Majesty's Coast Guard. Beach lifeguards can't be everywhere this summer, so they can't always protect your family, but you can. So keep an eye on your loved ones. Avoid taking risks in the sea. Don't use inflatables. In an emergency, dial 999 for the Coast Guard. Get more advice at rnli.org/beach2020. Thank you.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A major rally underway to wrap up the trading week after this morning's shocker of a jobs report, way better than expected. S&P up 87 now at 3199. That is a gain of 2.8%. The Dow up 881 points, up by 3.4%. NASDAQ up 205 now. That is a gain of 2.1%. 10-year down 29.30 seconds with a yield of 0.92%. Gold is down 2%. $16.79 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil surging 5.7%, $39.55 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much for that. Well, we definitely want to talk about the day's jobs news and also the week's news overall, the unrest across the country, what's been going on in the nation's capital with our next guest. We call him because he is a friend of our show. Joining us once again is Chris Liu, former Deputy Secretary of Labor under the Obama administration. He is a senior fellow at the University of Virginia Miller Center, and he joins us once again on the phone from Charlottesville, Virginia. Chris, we are delighted to have you back with us. I wish the backdrops were different, certainly when you think about the week, this past week. Yeah. But let's start with what many are calling is the good news, and that is the labor front. How did you read the numbers? Because it certainly was a shocker for everyone. I mean, our survey of economists, we talked to a lot of them. Everybody got it wrong, certainly the trend line.
So, we've been doing these calls for, years together, and I got to tell you, this is one of the most head-scratching numbers I have seen, because everyone was off. And it's also at odds with all of the other data we've seen, especially the weekly jobless claims. And so here's what I would probably say about this. It does suggest that the worst may be over. I would caution people about reading too much into this. When you kind of dig deep into the notes of the release, you see some potential red flags about the response rates in terms of collecting data. You see that some people may have been misclassified as employed when they really should have been unemployed. And so the actual rate is probably, unemployment rate, they say, is probably 3% higher, so about 16%. But unquestionably, And we'll obviously have to look at revisions down the road. But unquestionably, it seems like the worst is over. Now, how quickly the bounce back, I think, is still left unclear at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here. You can't see me, obviously, Chris. I continue to shake my head as everybody does. And it was interesting. I don't know if you heard it, but we even played like a little ad and promo, pulling some sound from our anchors who are not easily surprised this morning, sort of soaking all of this in. So, I mean, I guess as you do look at it with a much more studied eye than certainly I have, what does it say about policy moving forward if you're sitting in the administration right now? What do you do? What do you not do at this point?
So I would caution people about making taking premature victory laps and saying we don't need any more economic relief. What also may have happened here is the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest people to rehire got rehired. That next set of people will, I think, be much harder. I mean, we just simply look at like the announcements that come out from airlines and hotels and everything in travel and tourism and retail, and if you just add it up, it's thousands and thousands of layoffs, and those layoffs may be permanent layoffs. And so, again, I'm just sort of still not quite sure what to make of this, but my concern is that if we take our foot off the accelerator in terms of relief, whatever recovery we're experiencing will slow down. And we know that there's a next wave of layoffs coming, and that's state and local government employees. And if you want to find a dark spot in this report, it's the fact that 1.5 million government employees lost their jobs in the last 2 months. And we know that as states are trying to, start their fiscal years on July 1, many of them are running billion-dollar deficits, and the only way they can close that is by laying off teachers and police and firefighters. And so I would push forward on more relief, whether it is extension of small business loans, whether it is enhanced unemployment, because I don't think we're out of the woods.
Well, and I do wonder, too, Chris, how we slide back. Before we started talking with you, before this interview, we talked about what's going on with black unemployment. 16.8% rate for black Americans versus that moved up versus a rate ticking down for white Americans to 12.4%. The difference between the two rates, once again, swelling. We saw that in the last recession. I do wonder, especially against the backdrop of this past week, that if we're trying to lift people up, I do worry if the economic momentum is not there when we get on the other side of this, what happens to those that were already vulnerable?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point. And it's not just the past week, but it's the past couple of months with the pandemic has exposed so many systemic racial inequities. And we know that when economic times are bad, African Americans, other communities of color are more likely to become unemployed. They have a harder time getting rehired. They also have less savings, and so they don't have as much of a cushion. And so we should, I think, shine a light on these numbers and the fact that they're going in the opposite direction as white unemployment numbers.
Yeah, I mean, what has been exposed structurally, I think we continue to marvel is the wrong word, but the data are just stunning as you look at all of it. And as you say, between the pandemic and then this most recent crisis, sort of forcing what I think we're continuing to call some very uncomfortable conversations around how long this has been going on and what the ramifications are of all these economic levers that either have been pulled or haven't been pulled, and where we go from here. Chris Liu is going to stick with us. We have a lot more to talk to him about, including the notion of the government's response to everything that we've seen. We've talked to him a little bit in the past couple months about what's been going on with the pandemic, but we also know that the government has had to respond to this crisis of civil and civic unrest, Carol, and I do wonder, especially given the economic underpinnings, as we were just talking about with this, what he makes of all that.
Well, and I do wonder, too, he understands the government from being inside and how he sees it. Is this
all three branches, we should point out.
Exactly. It's a great point, Jason, and I do wonder, functioning or not functioning, how he sees it, because he has a really, really unique perspective. All right, folks, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Friday. We're going to continue our conversation with Chris Liu, former Deputy Secretary of Labor under the Obama administration, as Jason said, coming at us from having worked in all three branches of the government and now at the University of Virginia Miller Center. So much to come on this Friday, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Never have so many economists been so wrong. The government's May employment report stunned both forecasters and investors, showing a record 2.5 million jobs added and a lower jobless rate of 13.3%. Forecasts had called for more job losses in May and the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. The report put stocks into overdrive, sending the Nasdaq above its all-time closing high. The Dow Industrials are up 902, the S&P is up 88, the Nasdaq up 205. Grubhub is up 5%. CNBC reports Europe's Just Eat and delivery hero may be interested in buying the company. Uber also wants to acquire Grubhub, but that potential deal is raising antitrust concerns. The slowdown in U.S. oil drilling, triggered by collapsing energy demand, continued this week. Another 16 oil rigs shut down, leaving just 206 in operation, the fewest since 2009. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Bloomberg and Eaton Vance are proud to present a Boston Pop salute to our heroes. This Independence Day, the fireworks won't take place, but the orchestra's 4th of July tradition will continue. The program will feature guest artists and new music paying tribute to the heroes of the current health crisis and honoring the memories of those we have lost. Watch and listen July 4th starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Bloomberg Television and right here on Bloomberg Radio. You're living in a world built on...
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
At Asda, we've provided 3,500 care homes with priority access to delivery slots, and priority shopping hours are open to our care workers. We're also donating 250,000 face masks to care homes. Asda, we're all in this together. Please show ID for priority shopping. Check Asda.com for times.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone,
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free. It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 2005, Spaniard Rafael Nadal beats Mariano Purata of Argentina to claim his first French Open title.
In the backhand. It's away, and Nadal is the champion. An incredible young talent.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
The right time with Bomani Jones.
While he was gone, Al had some kind of vote to make him the managing. You remember he used to come up all the time in the Raiders game that he was the managing general partner. By the way, don't forget, there was a lot going on in Munich. But you know how tired that man was to come back and find out that Al Davis had strong-armed his team from him while he was gone?
Search the right time with Bomani Jones to listen.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the
Search
NFL.
PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Chris Liu, a former member of the Obama administration, worked in the Labor Department at a very senior level, but also has worked across the government. We're going to talk to him about where we are, where we may be going when it comes to the government's response.
He's the son of immigrants, too, so I am curious to see what he has to say about really our last week and the crisis that we're seeing, another crisis in our country. All right, let's get back to our top business stories, and let's get an update on that rally. Here is, once again, Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much, Carol Master. Happy Friday to you both. All about that job shocker this morning. Stocks are jumping, treasuries falling after a jobs report that far surpassed analyst forecasts, and that's bolstering expectations for the economy to rebound quickly from coronavirus lockdowns. Let's get right to the numbers. That's the story today. S&P up 90, a gain of 2.9%. The Dow is surging 886 points, have been up more than 1,000. That is a gain of 3.4%. NASDAQ is up 221 points, higher by 2.3%. United Airlines is going to be closing 3 international flight crew bases. According to a Reuters report, those closures will affect 850 flight attendants. Those are in Frankfurt, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. Dentists got back to work last month after the coronavirus forced many of them to close temporarily, accounting for the lion's share of job gains in the U.S. health industry. Meanwhile, the search for treatments continues at a rapid pace. Dr. Andrew Pekosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
There have been a few studies that have started using just antibodies as a therapy. So vaccines induce antibodies. Some companies have actually jumped to the fact of giving people those antibodies directly in terms of a treatment. And those studies are also moving forward and have shown some good promise initially.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. After earnings, Broadcom shares are rallying today. Ticker AVGO up by 4.4%. Gap after earnings up now by 1.4%. Wirecard's offices were searched today by German prosecutors as part of a probe involving the company's board members. The embattled company is attempting to rebuild its reputation after facing repeated allegations about its accounting methods raised in a series of articles by the Financial Times. Shares plunging now by 7.3%. Again, recapping, equities higher, the 10-year down 27.30 seconds, yield 0.91%. We've got gold down 2%, $16.80 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 5.5% now, $39.43 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Let's get back to our conversation with Chris Liu, University of Virginia Miller Center, former member of the Obama administration, very senior level in the Labor Department. And Chris, you know, having worked, as we said, across all branches of the government, I do wonder what you make of the role that the government has played, not so much in the medical crisis, but in this social, cultural, political crisis that we find ourselves engulfed in over the past 2 weeks. It's so much pain, so much anger in many cases, and so many big questions being raised. what's the right role of government here?
Well, look, I was listening to Senator Cory Booker today, and he, I think, made an important point, which is that government can't change people's attitudes, but we can change how they act out in good or bad ways. And certainly what this has highlighted is with respect to the police, law enforcement's relationship to communities of color, that needs to be changed. And during the Obama administration, we convened a task force on 21st century policing. It had a 100-page report. It was worth reading. There were some great recommendations that were adopted by local police forces, and that needs to continue. But I think we also need to recognize more broadly, as we said in the earlier segment, there are so many systemic economic inequities that have been exposed, jobs, healthcare, education, that just need to be addressed. And, we in the United States right now are not particularly good at dealing with long-term problems. We can sort of rally together when there's a crisis moment, but then we kind of forget and lose interest again. So I hope this moment, to the extent something good comes out of it, leads to kind of an understanding that we need to do more from a policy perspective.
Right, because you know what we do? We create policy. We create a lot of laws. There's this great column by Bloomberg opinion columnist Stephen Carter, at Yale Law School, and he talks, Chris, specifically about having too many laws, and those are laws that police have to legally enforce. And just this whole idea that the fewer the laws, the fewer the interactions between citizen and enforcer. These are his words. And the fewer the interactions between citizen and enforcer, the fewer the occasions for the interaction to turn violent. And I do wonder if we've kind of overlawed society. I understand we have to have laws, but have we overdone it?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important point. I mean, when you look at local police departments that have adopted more of a community policing model, that have retrained their law enforcement, and that really kind of get to foster a relationship, they're able to withstand these kinds of crises in a way that other communities where there's so much more distrust between law enforcement and people aren't able to do. And I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think, look, we need to stop crime. We have laws we need to enforce, but we need to completely rethink that relationship right now.
And so, from a labor perspective, what's something that we can think about? I mean, setting the jobs number aside, but those structural problems, how do we chip away at them? And unfortunately, we only have a minute for you to solve this entire problem, Chris.
No pressure, Chris.
No, I think this is the problem. I mean, I think what we learned out of the Great Recession was, as I said, so many communities get left behind in a time of recession. They're the last one to recover. We're going to be digging out of this recession from years and years to come. We need to ensure that people not just get back to work, but get back to good jobs that allow them to raise families, send their kids to college, and buy homes. And again, it's job training, it's raising the minimum wage, it's better labor standards, and it's just better opportunities, because we need to understand that our economy is changing, and that means a different kind of workforce, that economy. So that's just not for African Americans, that's frankly for all workers.
Tall task, for sure. Really good to spend some time with you, as always. Chris Liu, he is our go-to voice. I look forward to talking with him every month, because whether it is a blockbuster number or a number that, forces us to put our head in our hands, Carol, he always brings very relevant perspective and insights, and both historical and forward-looking, that I think we both appreciate.
And I think, Jason, like you rightfully pointed out, that he's worked in all branches of the government. He's now in academia, so he's seen the world from a lot of different perspectives and talked to a lot of people from those different walks of life. And I think, the broader that your perspective is, you can bring so much more to the conversation, which I think is what we need so much at this time. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Lots going on, Nancy Lyons.
Yes, Carol, you are correct. Economists thought the unemployment rate in May could hit 20% or more, rivaling what was seen during the depths of the Depression. But today we learned the unemployment rate fell unexpectedly to 13.3%. And in the White House Rose Garden, President Trump sounded optimistic that the worst is over.
But I think we're going to have a very good upcoming few months. I think you're going to have a very good August, very good July, but a spectacular maybe spectacular September, but a spectacular October, November, December, and next year is going to be one of the best years we've ever had economically.
Trump's political rival, Joe Biden, says he is disturbed to see the president crowing about the jobs report, especially since Biden says the numbers are still too high for communities of color.
Black employment went up this month. Latino employment jumped to over 37%. Hispanic unemployment overall is 4 times higher than it was before the president botched his response to the pandemic.
Biden says a president who takes no responsibility in costing millions and millions of Americans their jobs deserves no credit when a fraction of them return. Well, it's a video that's gone viral, and it's led to more police suspensions. It shows a Buffalo, New York police officer appearing to shove an elderly man who falls and cracks his head while police clear out protesters in a city square. The man is seen lifeless, blood coming out of his ear, but none of the officers are seen helping him. Buffalo's mayor says the police commissioner has suspended 2 officers without pay. The mayor says the 75-year-old man is in serious but stable condition. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize-change.
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus. We all need to stay alert so we can control the virus and reduce the risk of infection. Staying alert means you must stay at home as much as possible. Work from home if you can. Limit contact with others. Keep your distance if you go out. And wash your hands regularly. Do not leave home if you or anyone in your household has symptoms. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
From all of us at Thames Water, thank you for supporting our key workers. As the weather warms up, demand for our water is growing, so we need your help more than ever. From taking shorter showers to turning off your sprinklers, you can make every drop count, inside and outside your home, to keep taps flowing in your community. Just don't forget to keep washing your hands regularly in line with government advice. Be an H2O hero. Find out how at thameswater.co.uk/watersmart.
At Tesco, we've price matched Aldi on hundreds of products like bananas, peppers, chicken breasts, mushrooms, Warburton's bread, strawberries, even avocados. That's Tesco products at Aldi prices. Because now more than ever, every little helps. Tesco. Prices checked on comparable products from GBLD stores and online twice weekly. Price most often found matched excluding promotions. Selected Tesco stores excluding Express and all Northern Ireland stores. Products and their availability vary weekly and by store. Details at tesco.com/Aldi price match.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, and CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see
you. Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 2005, Spaniard Rafael Nadal beats Mariano Purata of Argentina to claim his first French Open title.
In the backhand.
It's away, and Nadal is the champion. An incredible young talent.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleton. Up Friday with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all rallying. Big gains for the S&P, up 91 points, close to session highs. Up right now by 2.94%. Best level of the day, the S&P have been up 99, up 3.2%. NASDAQ up 228, up 2.4%. The Dow is rallying 913, was up more than 1,000 points, up now by 3.5%. Stocks are jumping. Treasuries are falling after that jobs report that far surpassed analyst forecasts. That bolstered expectations for the economy to rebound quickly from coronavirus lockdowns. 10-year yield 0.90%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar and Jason Kelly. Well, professor of law at Yale Law School, at Yale Law School, and Bloomberg opinion contributor Stephen Carter. He's writing for Bloomberg Business Week this week. It's a column you can find online on the terminal in the magazine. Is looking at the protests and the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd and comparing them to the civil rights movement and protests of the 1960s. It's a must-read. Jason and I have been talking about this and looking forward to this conversation. Stephen joining us on the phone from Connecticut, along with Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber. And Joel, let's first get to you. Professor Carter's column, it fits into a politics section takeover on the protests in the magazine this week. Oh, we don't have Joel. Forgive me. Professor Carter, let me bring you in. We are delighted to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about the column that you wrote this week, because I do think, for those that do remember the protest, we're trying to make the comparisons. What's similar? What's different? What have we learned? What changes?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And this is a really important
topic, a lot of people have been asking, is it different this time? Because we see protests a lot. We see waves of protests after various things happen in this country that I hope we all dearly, dearly love. But they always seem to peter out. And so people are wondering, does this signal some deep and fundamental change? And that's the same question people were asking in the 60s and 70s with the civil rights protests of the 60s and the anti-war protests of the early 70s that kind of rolled into each other. They were happening around the same time. And by the early 1970s, when you had literally tanks in the streets in Washington, D.C., people were wondering, was this a real uprising? Was it a real revolution? Was this different from all the other protests that we'd seen? And people are asking the same question today. And that's what I was getting at, the similarities and differences between the two eras.
And so, you go through, part of what is so powerful about your column, Professor Carter, is, you list example after example after example that are very recent. And I do think that that's one of the things that's most troubling to us. And, and I say that as someone who grew up in Atlanta and around there and know so much about, the history of John Lewis and Andy Young and all of those people who did that very important work. And I have to think that people like that and candidly people like you look at this and just say, I can't believe this. So what do we do?
Let me be clear. I am not one of these people who says that nothing has changed in America. A lot of things have changed.
Sure.
It's a far better country than it was 50 years ago. I can remember when I was a kid on my way to school in Washington, D.C. during the 1968 riots after the death of the murder of Martin Luther King, that literally when I got to the corner where I was going to catch the bus in Washington, D.C. on Wisconsin Avenue, there were 3 National Guardsmen with carrying rifles standing at the bus stop looking at me, this black kid, very uneasily, although, of course, nothing obviously happened. We're a very different country now than we were then. One of the big differences, I think, is that in the 1960s, when people thought things were coming apart, that, of course, helped elect Richard Nixon, who ran as the guardian of law and order. It was key to his argument that liberals, in effect, the Democratic Party in his rhetoric, was letting the country fall apart and letting all this happen. He would restore order, and that was largely what he ran on after the 1968 riots. And I think those riots really did help elect him, maybe made the difference in electing him in 1968. When he ran for re-election in 1972, the great gift that he got was the huge anti-war riots, because his popularity was flagging a bit, but the riots, the anti-war demonstrations lifted his popularity, and of course he ended up winning in a landslide. The difference today is that the simple appeal to law and order by politicians, say by President Trump, for example, isn't really enough. Of course, no one wants disorder in the streets. No one wants violence. No one wants rioting. No one's property destroyed. But simply saying that needs to stop isn't enough anymore. We're in a country now that wants to hear something other than we're going to make these people pay. This is a country that really is starting to care in a deep way about racial injustice, and politicians now, to succeed, are going to have to address that in very serious and, I would say, empathetic terms.
Our technology's working. Joel Weber is with us, Bloomberg Business Week editor of the magazine. And Joel, I feel like Professor Carter's column fits into, such an important part of the politics section takeover that looks at the protests.
Well, I have to say, Professor Carter, when you filed your draft, and I was reading it, and I've read other things you've written on qualified immunity, but then, you round this corner, and I just thought it was amazingly eloquent, and it really, was one of these pieces this week that I read it, and, I've read so much, but, this one was, I think, one of the ones that stuck with me the most, which was that you round this corner and go, you can basically think about this through a lens of cops and all that, but there's laws that are being written that are telling the cops what to do. And, if we have too many laws, then obviously we're going to see conflict. Maybe that escalates. And in effect, we have too many laws on the books. And, I just thought that was just as a citizen in this country, that was a take I had not heard from anybody. And I want to know from you, like, we as a society, I mean, like, how do we wrestle with that? How do we make fewer laws? Because that seems to be one of the things that we try and do every time we elect someone.
Well, I do think that we have too many laws, and it's not a liberal or conservative issue. Some years ago, the Congressional Research Service was asked to count how many federal laws there were, and they couldn't do it because there are so many federal statutes that basically allow administrative agencies to create crimes. We have legislators at both the state and local level who like to show how serious they are about something by turning it into a crime. But if you're going to have crimes, then you're going to have enforcement. And if you're going to have enforcement, a lot of enforcement, there are more and more flashpoints where terrible things can happen. And so people forget that when Eric Garner was killed by New York City police in 2014, which sparked the beginning of these years that we've had of protests and fury in the African community, my community, about police killings. When Eric Garner was killed, the crime for which they were trying to arrest him was selling loosies, that is, individual untaxed cigarettes. And he was, and that law was being enforced because business owners had complained, and politicians had then ordered the police to crack down on this issue. But for that crackdown, he would still be alive. But the crackdown was the issue of whether you can sell cigarettes individually untaxed or not, which does not seem to me to be the sort of thing in which the state should invest a lot of violent enforcement effort.
Well, it's just an amazing look, and we're so delighted to have you here. We hope you will come back, Professor Carter, because as Joel is, I'm a huge, longtime fan of yours. I've read so much of your work and really admire everything you're saying.
And I'm just going to say there's two columns that we were talking about, and I'll put them both out on Twitter. One is in the magazine about the wrong reach of the law, which is what Joel was addressing, and then there was what we initially kicked off about talking about what's going on today versus the 60s protests. So our thanks to Stephen Carter and to Joel Weber, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
At the start of every day,
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to stand out stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr. and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo and start listening today.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game. From rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all surging. The big question at 3 o'clock Wall Street time, is this rally going to stay right through the closing bell? Only way to get the answer, stay with Bloomberg. We'll keep you up to date. Here's where we stand. S&P up now by 84 points off our session highs, but still a gain of 2.7%. Best level of the day, the S&P had been up by 3.2%. The Dow's rallying 853, up 3.2%. NASDAQ is up 208. That's a gain of 2.2%. Stocks are jumping. Treasuries are falling after that jobs report far surpassed analyst forecasts, bolstering expectations for the economy to rebound quickly from coronavirus lockdowns. Tiffany Wilding is chief U.S. economist at PIMCO, and on Bloomberg Television this morning, she reacted to the report.
I think one thing that that does come out of this is that some of the things that the programs that the government has implemented, like the payroll protection program, maybe those things are working a lot better than we thought. So that program actually incentivizes businesses to rehire back people, so they can get loans from the government that ultimately will become grants. So I think this report suggests that those kinds of policies maybe are much more impactful than maybe many people thought.
Travel stocks among the day's biggest winners, specifically cruise line stocks. Right now, Carnival Corp up 19.1%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings up 17.3%. Royal Caribbean is up by 24.9%. Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian says he has resigned from his position on the company's board and is urging his spot be filled with a black candidate. He says he will pledge $1 million to Know Your Rights Group, a nonprofit founded by Colin Kaepernick, and will use future gains of his Reddit stock to serve the black community. Recapping, equities higher across the board. The 10-year down 24/30 seconds with a yield of 0.90%. Gold down 1.9%, 16.82 the ounce. Crude now surging 5.3% to $39.40 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics here. The economic story of the day, it's clear. It's the jobs report. And as I said at the top of the show, quoting my esteemed co-host, Carol Masser, WOA. I mean, there's no other way. It's like double WOA or like WOA to the infinity. I don't know exactly how you would characterize it, Carol.
Yeah, exactly.
But we want to make some sense of it.
Beyond.
Exactly. With Yelena Shalecheva, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. All right, Yelena, we were all blown away by this number. What happened?
Blown away, probably. It was better than expected on many fronts, not just the headline payrolls number. It includes a decline in the unemployment rate, a significant rebound in the diffusion index, which reflects the breadth of industries hiring. But it's by no means the time for a victory lap. I think that, instead, the latest statistics highlight the importance of a timely and sizable policy response and the need for additional fiscal measures in the second half of the year, probably, again, directly aiming at supporting the labor market. So I think that this report is a clear example that policymakers did make a difference. They responded in a timely and an aggressive way, both the fiscal authorities and monetary policy authorities, and that's what's required going forward. The economic fundamentals are not anywhere near the levels that prevailed before the crisis, and unfortunately, the economic recovery is unlikely to continue by itself. I think it still requires some support from policymakers.
So are you saying that, so the trend line's getting better, but unless we continue to get relief, it's not going to stay that way?
Correct. Okay. If you look at the wage income growth, the level of wages actually in the economy, there was a huge decline in that level since the crisis started. And wages never got back to the level where they were before the crisis. So in order to compensate for that gap between the previous trend and the current level of wages, the economy still requires some support in the way of jobless benefits, PPP programs, and such. So I think that is an important message to policymakers, that they did something right, but they need to do more.
So what do we look at next, Yelena, to get a sense of how much of this was, to use a technical term, just a little funky, and what do we see that would bolster the case and lead to someone taking a victory lap? Like, what else do we need to see to give us confidence here?
I think, Jason, you put it exactly right. So we cannot be confident just simply because of one good jobs report. We need to look at the different measures, including jobless claims, which basically are telling us that things are not as rosy as the payrolls report is suggesting. And we need to look at other measures of the labor market. And particularly, we need to look at the pace of income growth and wage growth. So until we see that is on a very strong upward trajectory, I wouldn't be, saying, okay, that the crisis is over and everything is great again.
All right. So economists, do you think economists in general are going to have a better time calling the June jobs report? And we love you, but I'm just trying to understand, because, right, they got it so wrong.
Okay, well, I think everybody was really surprised by that number. And, it was very much an objective thing to expect another decline based on the data available. So we don't really make up the numbers. We look at different indicators, including jobless claims, and they were suggesting a decline. I think the positive numbers can continue in June and perhaps in July, but let's see what happens after all this augmented measures of support in the labor market expire, and whether we'll get another stimulus package.
Yeah.
So what happens then, and whether aggregate demand will be strong enough to support